A reading from the Gospel according to Marco. Midnight Mass is my favorite TV show produced in the last decade. Seeing as how each host is going to give their own reading today, I'm not going to focus this reading on the plot of the show, but instead on the theme it conveys. There are a few topics we've discussed on this podcast that are all paid off in this episode. We've discussed, as far back as episode 3, how religious allegories can serve to tell amazing stories when the person writing them knows what they're talking about. A theme introduced in that episode was one of nuance, and how boring it was to watch a movie about atheists versus religious people. This idea of nuance was brought up again in our episode of Promising Young Woman. We discussed how there was a version of that movie, a perfectly watchable version, that was a silly slasher, but in the right hands it became something more, something truly artful. In episode 3 of this podcast, I pulled a quote from Aaron Sorkin. It read as follows: "I'm not interested in bad versus good, I'm interested in good versus great." Midnight Mass is not interested in atheist versus religion, it's interested in religion versus faith. We've discussed in a great deal how us three hosts were all raised Catholic and went to Catholic school, and still know faithful people to this day. The brilliance of the theming of Midnight Mass is not just in its condemnation of religious dogma, but the way it showcases how faith, not religion, can be a positive impact on people's lives. There is a watchable version of this show where our heroes, the sheriff, Riley's parents, and Aaron, are all full-on non-believers. But what makes Midnight Mass so compelling, to me, is its ability to showcase that faith in its purest form is nothing more than a personal tool used to cope with trauma. The sheriff's faith is tied to his deceased wife. Erin's faith is her reprieve from an abusive relationship. Riley's parents' faith is their way of holding on to sanity in a world where their son has ruined lives with his actions. The brilliance of this take is so artfully infused into the series. The priest is holding AA meetings for Riley at the church rectory. This metaphor can't be lost. At its core, faith is nothing more than AA meetings, but instead of addiction trauma, it's existential trauma. It's a place to process the unknowns of the universe and incomprehensible loss. It's a place to acknowledge that you don't have all the answers and neither does anyone else. Whereas religious dogma, the institution of the thing, is a method by which to seek power and control. It's something that sucks the life out of you. Literally. Because this, in its most literal sense, is a vampire story. The same way Mike Flanagan showed us with Haunting of Hill House what a modern-day ghost story could be, he's now tackled vampires as well. The dogmatic religious followers, the people preserving the institution, do what they always do. They rationalize the evil they're seeing by pulling out-of-context quotes from the Bible. So beautifully this point is driven home that at the end of the story, when Riley's parents have been turned by the blood of the vampiric creature, they watch as the rest of the townsfolk become uncontrollable monsters. And they reflect by acknowledging that resisting the temptation isn't actually that hard. These townsfolk are simply using it as an excuse to be the evil people they always were. But the most beautiful metaphor of all comes at the story's end. As the sun rises on Easter morning, the entire town dies, but those with faith, the sheriff, Riley's parents, and Aaron, comfortably accept their fate. They don't have all the answers, but they are not afraid. That's what faith can bring. But the members of the institution, the power-hungry folk who use religion as an excuse to be vile and hateful, now faced with the loss of their power, are afraid. Because to them, this was nothing more than an exercise in obtaining power and control. I've liked everything Mike Flanagan has done. Gerald's Game and Doctor Sleep are wonderful traditional horror movies. Hill House is a beautiful ghost story that's also about mental illness. However, I remarked on our Hill House episode that while I thought it was excellent, I did not feel a drive episode to episode to keep watching, and I felt no drive to return to it. I don't know if it's the subject matter hitting so close to home to me, the storytelling, or a combination of both, but Midnight Mass is the opposite. This is going to become required Holy Week viewing for me. Never has a piece of art about religion so perfectly nailed my own thoughts and captured my imagination. There are things that are too hard or painful to understand in the world. If your way of coping is faith, more power to you. We all need to find our ways to understand our own experiences, otherwise we'd all lose our minds. But if faith is a tool for hatred, if it's a method by which you choose to seek power, then it ceases to become faith, it becomes religion. And also, this is the best vampire story ever put to film. It's not even close. I'd like to leave you with a quote from the series that, for me, perfectly sums up why it works. It's a quote filled with exactly my worldview that references quotes from actual scripture, and it's also just beautifully written. The perfect microcosm of Midnight Mass. Quote, "I'm returning home, and it's like a drop of water falling back into the ocean, of which it's always been a part. All things apart. You, me, and my little girl, and my mother and my father. Everyone who's ever been, every plant, every animal, every atom, every star, every galaxy. All of it. More galaxies in the universe than grains of sand on the beach. And that's what we're talking about when we say God. The cosmos and its infinite dreams. We are the cosmos dreaming of itself. It's simply a dream that I think is my life, every time. But I forget all this. I always do. I always forget my dreams. But now, in this split second, in the moment I remember, The instant I remember, I comprehend everything at once. There is no time, there is no death. Life is a dream, it's a wish, made again and again and again and again and again and again, and into eternity. I am all of it, I am everything, I am all, I am that I am. End quote.
A reading from the Gospel according to Carolina. I accidentally encountered my roommate watching the show Midnight Mass one day in late September of 2021. When I tuned in, all I saw was a church covered in blood. I had no idea of the actual plot or its connection to Mike Flanagan's Haunting series that I had previously watched and loved. And because all that I saw was that gruesome scene, I didn't think of it again. Then we did our podcast episode talking about The Haunting of Hill House in October of 2021. And after it ended, Dan was fervently recommending, almost demanding, that we watch Midnight Mass. Then, 2 months later, when I went to Windsor to visit my family and friends for Christmas, I was talking about my 10-hour-long train journey back to Ottawa when, I don't remember if this was Dan or myself, realized that was the perfect amount of time to watch this 7-hour-long limited series. So I downloaded all of the episodes and began to watch. While it was a little bizarre to be watching such a dark series, something that I would normally associate with spooky season, immediately following such a jolly time, I was immediately enthralled. And I also realized that this is more than a show to throw on during October to get in the Halloween spirit. This show, while including some horror and suspense that genuinely scared me as I rewatched an episode before bed last night, really spends most of its time introducing you to a very small and fractured community on the remote Crockett Island, and the conflicts that would naturally emerge when you live around only a few dozen people, especially when some of them, cough cough Bev Keane, are judgmental and just truly mean people. The show's true plot unravels in a way that feels both very quick, with several miracles and deaths happening in the first few episodes, and the truth behind them all being revealed by the 4th episode, but also in a very slow and meticulous way, leaving some aspects of the town and townspeople's mystery to be revealed in the final episode. The point of the show seems to be to invite you to muse upon your own religious beliefs and feelings about grief and regret and power and faith and hope and love. And as we all know, I love to feel things and apparently reflect on my own emotions, so this show was my jam, despite a lot of violence and blood, which is usually not my fave. Amen.
Amen. Amen for that. A reading from the Gospel according to Daniel. It's only been little more than 7 months since Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass came out, and already it's had more of an effect on me than most films and shows I've seen in my entire life. This is a truly moving series. There's more power stored within its 7 episodes than many whole series have at all, especially for someone like myself who grew up in a Catholic setting. This show speaks on topics of faith, religion, mob mentality, the purpose of existence, and what happens to us when we die, all of which played a part in growing up Catholic. Throughout the years, I started making my own decisions on what I think about the true nature of the universe we live in, eventually shedding the religious upbringing I was taught as the universal truth. Still, though, I maintain a respect for people who use their faith to cope with life's dealings, and I appreciate the distinction that Midnight Mass makes regarding religion and faith. The former is a human-made institution that seeks to convert others to its particular set of beliefs, while the latter is meant to be a very personal quality of perseverance through hardship. Having faith in that sense should be a different and unique experience for everyone, while religion implies that an entire population of people somehow agree on the exact same set of beliefs and opinions on impossibly dense subjects such as life, death, morals, and the existence of a higher power. Midnight Mass is a clever, calculated type of production, one that houses its elemental opposing forces in equally developed, well-written, and mostly sympathetic characters on both sides of the argument in question. I think that's what I love most about it, because though I no longer associate with any particular religion or faith, that doesn't mean I despise people who choose to do so. Just like this series shows us, I maintain that it's the institution that lies at the root of the problem, and there are good people on all sides, theists, atheists, and agnostics alike. All in all, this show serves as a reminder for what happens when groups of people get swept up in trying to classify something we as humans don't yet understand as a divine message or something otherwise supernatural. And again, I think it does so in a very tasteful manner, paying due respect to all sides. What sets Midnight Mass apart from a lot of other projects that have aimed to make statements against religious dogma and blind worship is its avoidance of a lopsided playing field, where one side is pitted to be so obviously and blatantly correct that the victor at the end doesn't even feel rewarding. In Midnight Mass, it's a fair fight, and many strong points are made by characters on each side of the argument, so the final result hits hard and proves to be effective. The show introduces us to the scarcely populated Crockett Island, 30 miles from the U.S. mainland. The island houses a tight-knit population of people who are struggling to keep the community afloat due to its relative isolation. The town has electricity, running water, cell service, and transport to and from the mainland, but it is still surrounded by water and a far cry from the nearest city. With the misfortune the inhabitants of Crockett have seen throughout the years, they quickly turn to a new priest who has just moved in from the mainland, and who begins to renew the faith of some, but raise questions for others. We follow Riley, a recovering alcoholic who has returned home to the island after killing a driver in a drunk driving accident, and is now looking for purpose, and Aaron, who has recently come home after traveling throughout the U.S., but eventually settling into the religion in which he was raised to believe, along with a whole ensemble of characters with their own journeys. What unfolds is a story of redemption, acceptance, and pondering one's role and existence in the universe, as the people of Crockett Island question everything they were ever taught to believe. Whether you have any connection whatsoever, positive or negative, to the concept of religion or faith, or you're just in the mood to watch a gripping, emotional, and well-shot character drama thriller with captivating performances, powerful music, and something meaningful to say, Midnight Mass is worth experiencing for yourself. I think this is a very important show, and pretty much anyone can get something valuable out of it. It truly is a force to be reckoned with. Amen.
Amen.
What is the feature-length podcast? Anyone?
The feature-length podcast is a show where three idiots talk about film and entertainment.
Good answer.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, are you talking to us?
Yeah. I'm talking to the voices in my head.
Like, I truly don't know. It felt like a fever dream. I swear to God, I could not
It sounds
make
so
this shit
stupid
up.
hearing that.
If you're listening to this is a podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast, a podcast where we talk about movies and TV for a feature length of time.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast, everyone. Hope you enjoyed our little gospels up front. Just sticking with the whole religious theme. And hey, thanks for checking this out. This is posting at the beginning of Holy Week. That's a lie. Not the Palm Sunday would have been the beginning of Holy Week. This is posting on Good Friday.
Right.
So enjoy it over these next 3 days if that's when you're listening to it. And if not, wait till next year because you can't watch it otherwise.
We should post it at midnight.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because everyone's going to see that it posted at midnight because they wait
But it's worth it.
awake.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Smart. That voice with the great idea you heard was Dan.
Oh, hello.
And the other voice that agreed with the idea was Carolina.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Marco. Thanks for joining us to talk about this incredible show. If you couldn't tell from the intro, we all absolutely fucking adore this show.
It's so good.
So good. I know there were some spoilers in the intro, but like if for some reason you've made it this far and are curious but haven't watched the show, spoilers or not, like go watch it.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal, and then come back.
You want to do a
Absolutely.
recommendations right now?
Let's do it.
Okay.
You go first.
Okay. Well, I already kind of alluded to it in my intro,
Yeah.
but just to expand upon that, I think not only is this a show for everyone, I also think this is one of those shows that everyone ideally should watch.
Yeah.
Like everyone, no matter your faith or whatever, your outlook on life, should see this show for what it's trying to say.
Yeah.
As I said, I think it's a very important production in its message, and also it's just like extremely well made as well. The cinematography, the sound design, everything, the acting, the music. Oh my god. All around, I can't not suggest this show. And it's ironic because we as a group have recently been talking like we want to do more specific recommendations.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But starting with this one, it's hard because I really would recommend this to everyone. There's not a group that I wouldn't, except like young children.
Sure.
I
Like,
was
age
gonna
appropriate.
Yeah,
say
yeah, yeah,
definitely not
That's
children.
pretty obvious. Though.
Yeah. I mean, just to piggyback off that, I 100% agree. young children, and then I would also maybe just throw in, like, if you are extremely squeamish towards horror.
Yeah, I guess.
There is, like,
We're
not...
very, very, very easily scared.
Yes. Like, there is such little horror in this, but if like, even just the idea of it really fucks with you...
There are a few jump scares.
Yeah, like, maybe this would not be for you, but other than that, I would 100% go with it. You absolutely do not have to be religious to get something out of this.
It's probably even better if you aren't, or no.
I go back and forth on it because, like,
actually, I take that back. It's probably
like there is so much stuff in here that I think is so rude, and why it was so compelling to me was because, like, this. We'll get into it. This feels like something written by people like us. But what I mean by that is that people that were brought up in it,
Yeah.
and then shifted out of that to be like, whatever you do for you is great, but the institution sucks. So,
Well,
like,
I mean, we know it was. Because, like,
right, but
that is Mike
yes,
Flanagan.
because it was
company.
written by it was written by Mike Flanagan. But yeah, so, like, if that's your worldview, great. If you are still extremely devout, you will still like this show. Like, that was the other thing that I was so stricken by, and I was talking about in the intro, was just like, it's just cool how... Is there another loud noise happening on your end?
Yeah, they're doing street sweeping today.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Alright, you might just hear some street vehicles.
Yeah, if you hear anything, it's because we couldn't cut it
It's
out.
all my fault.
We'll try. Yeah, there's just, like... I don't think there's anyone that would not get something out of this. Again, unless you are extremely squeamish or young. But give it a chance, I would say. If you're on the fence, 100% give it a go.
See, and I'm kind of also in the same boat. I do think that everyone should watch it. But then I think, like, specifically, I don't know why, maybe because I saw her yesterday and we were discussing it. But Rachel, like, I don't know if this is something she would vibe with. You know what I mean? Not, like, because of the religious themes or anything. And, like, she likes horror, but she's the type of person who, like, when Oscar season rolls around, she's like, I have never liked an Oscar movie in my whole life. Like, she would rather watch, you know, like, a Netflix-produced rom-com or, like, a K-drama, and I, like, respect the hell out of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what type of person that is, but I don't know if she would like this.
See, that's really interesting because something I was grappling with, because I watched this by myself, because I needed to get it, well, I didn't need to, but I wanted to get it done early for the podcast, and it was while Madison had COVID. And I bring this up because normally Madison just ends up watching, because whenever I have free time, I'm with her and we're watching it. So, but she had COVID, so I was like, you know what, this is a great opportunity to just binge through this miniseries. But she's seen all of Mike Flanagan's other stuff and likes it to varying degrees. I think Hill House was her favorite of it, but also like the movies that we've watched of his. But I was also in that same vein. I was kind of like, I don't know. Because, like, she is also, like us, like, recovering Catholics. And, like, I don't know. But just because of the content of it, you're right. I was sort of like, she very much would be in that same category as Rachel of, like, I don't know if it would hook her as early. But I almost feel like if I was there going, like, wait.
Yeah.
And then once we get there. Yeah.
So I recommend it to everyone,
Yes.
but you might need a person sitting next to you being like, no, keep going. I promise by the time you get to the end, it'll be worth it.
Well, and that, even for me, I mean, even from my experience watching it, after episode 1, just after having watched the first episode, I was like, okay, seems like Hill House. Seems like a well-written show. Cool.
Yeah.
And then it was like, systematically, we kept kind of building on stuff, and I was like, I was like hooked where I had to finish it. And then it ended, and I was like, oh, like it was the most...
I feel
gratifying.
like episode 2 by the end, it's like, oh, you can't stop watching. At this point,
Yes.
you're in it
Yes.
till the end. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's when you started texting us, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
good.
So I do think, I think, so to go off that, even if this doesn't seem like it would be your jam, like,
Try it anyway.
give it a
Give it a
few
chance.
episodes. Give it a chance. Like, it's not going to be after episode 1, but I would say, like, if by episode 3 you're not hooked, then you can stop.
And it's on Netflix. Like, most people have Netflix, so you probably have access to it. Also, this is like one of the greatest things Netflix has put out in I don't know how long.
Oh,
not even close. I mean, like I said, this is my favorite just TV show of the last decade, probably, outside of, like, Breaking Bad. I think it's just this. So, it's incredible. And it's short. It's easily digestible.
7 episodes, yeah.
And it's so, just to talk about the format a little bit, I love, it has, like, that, like, not American format. right? Because like American shows are normally like you have the whole writer's room and everyone writes an episode like and you break. But this has the like the very like English like Fleabag style of just like this person had an idea and just wrote the whole thing, and it's so consistent across the whole thing because Mike Flanagan is insanely talented.
Yeah, and also it's a mini series, so that like there's only ever going to be the one season. Which makes it even more bingeable and also I think helps protect its legacy as well.
Me too.
I'm happy that we're not going to be getting any more than this.
Same. We're not going to get afternoon mass.
Yeah.
Sunday morning mass.
Twilight mass. Yeah.
Ooh, Twilight mass, so like a Twilight Midnight Mass crossover?
Ooh, because vampires! Yeah! That would be cool!
I hate myself for bringing that up.
Oh my god, could you imagine Robert Pattinson coming back to reprise his role?
That's literally mixing the worst thing ever with the greatest thing ever.
Oh my god. Oh, also, I said this is maybe the best vampire thing ever put to film, but also Twilight. So this and Twilight, I think, are probably on equal footing.
Top two,
in terms of
yeah.
The top two. Can we talk about the, like...
Twilight?
Yeah, I always want to talk about Twilight.
Let's just talk about Twilight.
Like the horror aspects. Can we...
Sure,
just
I
to
actually
go
have
with
stuff
that,
to
right?
say too.
Okay, cool. I just thought it was cool. Like, I dug it. Once I realized what it was, what they were doing, I was like, oh, that's really fucking smart. Like,
yeah.
I don't know what else to say. I was like, Mike Flanagan, you done it again, you bastard.
Yeah. So, on the topic of the horror stuff, I also like the horror stuff. I've watched this show 3 times now.
Nice.
And
it's digestible,
on my third watch, I would say, like, I don't even think I would classify this as horror anymore. It's horror in the sense that like Jurassic Park is horror.
Yes.
Like, there are horror elements, but I wouldn't call the whole thing like a horror.
Yeah.
As I said, it's probably like I would classify it as like a thriller, mostly drama. Very similar to Hill House. I mean, Hill House was pretty much downright horror in parts, but in the sense that it's very drama, character-driven, heavy.
Yeah.
But yeah, for what horror it does contain, I also like this exploration of vampires. Mm-hmm. Now, you were texting us in the group chat as you were watching about like the whole vampire thing, and it's interesting because I kind of read it a little bit differently. I don't think I'm curious to see what you guys think. I don't view it as a literal vampire story, more so like that thing that we see. I won't go into too much detail right now, but that creature that shows up is still like it's not something, it's more of like a religious folktale thing than a vampire per se, but it's like a vampiric type situation with the whole blood and needing to feed off of others too.
Yeah. This is a very interesting distinction.
I will say I always like referred to it in my headcanon as a demon, maybe because of the religious setting.
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
And even though it did involve fully like drinking blood, and then when you get involved with it and die, you like also want to drink blood. Funnily enough, never in my head did I ever think of vampires. I don't know why. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe because they set up the religious aspect of it so much that I could not get that out of my head. So I was always just like, yeah, no, it's a demon. The bloodlust is irrelevant. It's just like, has nothing to do with vampires.
That's also kind of a demon thing anyway.
Yeah. But that's what I always... And, like, speaking to, like, why... Because in my intro, I also said that at one point I was genuinely scared yesterday. I was also high, but... it's only and it's only ever in the moments when there's like a character who like sees something out of their window, you know what I mean? And then there's that like suspense. So it was never actually like you see a monster and you're scared. It's just more so like, even though I've seen it, I was kind of expecting like a jump scare or like what will be outside the window, you know? And like that's probably as far towards horror as it goes. So it's still
Makes
like
sense.
Not bad and like super digestible for
for sure. Okay, I want to talk about this whole vampire distinction because I also had a lot of thoughts about the choices there, which is so first of all, in terms of it being a vampire, quote unquote, it's more like, to me, this was like his take on a vampire story, but not necessarily that this is like Dracula. Like, that's not, but It's like he's using the built-in themes to tell a version of a, like, this would be like his version of a vampire story, as opposed to doing like a traditional vampire story, much in the same way like Hill House is a ghost story, but it's also like not like, it's not The Exorcist. Like, it's a ghost story, but like only in so much as it's informed by the universe and like characters around it that make sense. And this is sort of the same
backdrop.
thing. It's a backdrop.
Much like how Twilight puts a spin on vampires by not displaying them how they...
by making them sparkly, sexy people.
Yeah.
It's very similar. I mean, you would be hard-pressed to find many differences. But here's what I thought was so cool, right? Is when it was first happening, and as it was going on, there was a part of me at first that was like, oh, like, is the implication of this, and it's never 100% answered, but I have my take on it, but it's like, is the implication of this supposed to be that all of what we have in terms of like stories in the Bible and religion is like, this is actually what people were referring to when they were talking about angels, and like that this is literally canonically that, but we just interpreted it wrong over the years. And that was sort of my first takeaway.
Yeah, because people only ever say angels are like, they have wings and can't be looked at directly or whatever.
Yes. Which is why...
Or shouldn't be.
They assume.
Yeah.
But, and then by the end of the show, when like the themes became super, super prevalent of what they were trying to say, is when I was like... It actually goes even deeper, not only to the idea that, well, this isn't an angel, but they're doing the thing that all shitty religious people do of just pulling random quotes to justify, like, we should hate these type of people because the Bible said this one line, and we're going to take that out of context to say that we should hate this type of people. And it's like they're applying that same logic to this clearly evil creature, and saying, like, it has to be an angel. What else would it be? And it's like, I don't know. But the idea that even within this universe, this like religious universe, that like if you go back canonically, and there's so many like Bible references in this, but like in the canon of the Bible, that like demons and the devil were just fallen angels.
Yes.
And so like,
what's the difference between an angel and a demon?
So this is just a fallen, it is an angel in so much as it's a fallen angel that literally can't go out in the sun or whatever, and using that to tell the vampire story. And like, it's not, and I'm so fucking thankful we didn't get a scene of like they figured it out, and it's like, this is actually
it's a vampire.
Yeah, no, we never get that, but it's just like, because of the religious subtext, like you can piece that together for yourself, and I loved it.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much on the same page, where like I didn't think it was literally a vampire. I thought it either was a literal angel in that universe where they exist, or it was like a demon thing that they assumed to be an angel. But either way, there's really not too much difference there when you think about it. Like,
no.
Considering the context. So one of those, and I just kind of left it ambiguous in my own head.
Yeah.
Because the message is the same either way.
Yeah, what I like about it, if it is a demon, like, let's say canonically, it is like a fallen angel.
Because it's literally on Earth, too.
Because it's literally on Earth.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is cool about that is the idea that, like, going with the theming of it, that these, like, super dogmatic religious people can't even recognize the difference between, like, an actual angel versus...
But they make so many judgments, yeah.
And also, like, I think so much of the show, is Mike Flanagan going, like, you people are actively doing all the things your faiths say not to do, and, like, literally in this show, they are worshiping the representation of the devil.
Yeah.
As opposed
especially
to...
be, like, when we have characters like Bev Keane who are so quick to demonize everything and everyone, but then when coming face to face with an actual demon is like, no, this is great.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it just, because I did some research, it is interesting because obviously other people on the internet were like, what actually was this creature? So everyone was trying to compare it to things in Bible or other cultures' beliefs. And so apparently in the Bible, first mentioned in Proverbs, there are like vampiric demons called Alukas. So people were saying it could be one of those. And even some people think it might be similar to the Wendigo from the Algonquin culture, because they also have insatiable greed and hunger and are cannibals, which is not the same as sucking blood, but like it obviously, because it isn't meant to be I don't think he wrote this with the intention of having it be a specific thing it like referenced in any book or religion. So it is possible that he got inspiration from all of these different religions and cultures. So I don't actually think it matters in the end, to be honest.
Exactly.
If it is specifically an Aluka or whatever it's supposed to be, I don't even know if I'm saying that right. But yeah, everyone on the internet had different ideas of where it could have come from.
Yeah, and I love that because
Yeah.
again, ultimately the theme is just the idea of like you're worshiping something that you shouldn't be worshiping, and it's like because it brings out the evil part of you that was always there.
It validates.
It validates the evil. Yeah, exactly, exactly, which is lit. And also, while we're talking about it, I think
Lit like an Easter candle.
yes. An Easter. I don't even. Easter candle. The creature effects, I think, were also fantastic.
Yeah, especially for like a show.
Yeah,
I mean,
I was
know
gonna
it's a-
say.
Netflix
Yeah.
productions, like, they can be pretty good, but sometimes they aren't. So
Well, especially one
Yeah.
produced
Glad they-
entirely in COVID.
True, yeah.
Because
That's
this
the
was
other
filmed
thing.
August
This
2020.
came out last year.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I know.
Mike
But,
Flanagan's been on a roll with like COVID content.
That is true. That is true. He's the chief creative officer of the COVID era. He's
my
just
God.
putting out good content. Speaking of that, though, it is kind of something I want to touch on. Like, so Mike Flanagan, to a certain degree, kind of got his start adapting Stephen King stuff with Gerald's Game and Dr. Sleep. And this, and Red Letter Media said this in their review of this, but also it was a thought I had as well independently, so I'm not stealing it. This is like the best Stephen King thing ever, but it's not actually written by Stephen King. But it's just like this small town with these weird fucking folksy people and like this weird horror thing that's happening inside of character dynamics. But like, it's not Stephen King, so it's not like a coke-fueled nightmare. It's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah, there won't
a
be
wonderful
anything
piece of art.
creepy with children
No,
doing weird sexual shit with each other for no reason.
Correct. Correct.
The only thing this needs is to take place in Maine.
Yeah, if this took place in Maine, but even like the town itself is kind of like rainy, a gloomy.
It could be
fisher
an
town.
island off of Maine.
So
Yeah.
like, I mean, it is so.
It's never specified.
Yeah, it's so Stephen King. It's so like modern Stephen King of like the next generation of it. But
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
One thing I want to, while we're still talking about like the horror aspects, we start from the very first episode. We get these jump scares of. So as we've talked about, like Riley was in a drunk driving accident.
Yes.
And the person that he killed, like, sort of haunts him with a few jump scares that are like intermittent throughout the show. But I like how they start out. Obviously, you don't expect it the first time, so it is the most like pure sense of a jump scare. And then as they go on, you see the scene that tells you it's about to happen again. So it becomes more and more expected until the very end, where it's almost a beautiful thing. It's not even scary at all. Like the transition of that effect from scary to like him accepting it and it being portrayed as just this thing of beauty, as the horror kind of just drains out of it completely. I love that.
Yeah.
But
it's
even
really
I will
wonderfully done.
say, you called it a jump scare, and it is in the sense that it isn't expected, but something I really respect that Mike Flanagan did in this, and also a lot in Hill House, is that there is almost like a complete change in perspective before this like quote unquote jump scare, because it's almost always when he's like laying in bed, so the whole view of the camera shifts to be laying on your side, and like that happens so slowly before the reveal of like the scary figure. And I love that, because even then it's almost like easing you into it. So it's not like, okay, like you were just looking out this window and pop, like no,
Yeah.
it's like a
Yeah,
slow descent into like the image that's supposed to be haunting you, and it's so
Yeah.
good. It's so
And I
good.
also like how, ironically, car horns just went out off outside your window, which is exactly related to what I'm about to say. I like how the diegetic sound of the jump scare pertains to what's happening in the scene. Like the first time we get it, yeah, thanks. The first time we get it, there's like car horns, or like maybe it's like a car crash sound
yeah.
effect that plays during the jump scare because it was a drunk driving accident. And like the second time is when he's home on the island when he's dreaming about it. So we get like I think it's a seagull sound effect with the jump scare. So it's cool how they changed that to like fit in with the environment that Riley's currently in when experiencing it.
Yeah, and it also like we've talked about the annoyance of like the big musical sting that accompanies a jump scare, like for no fucking
just
reason.
a generic.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, Yeah, and it helps, like you guys said, like turn it into something that's not like it is effectively a jump scare, but it's not stupid.
Yeah. And it has a purpose.
It has a purpose, and it is more palatable and not like I could show this to someone that doesn't like horror, and they wouldn't be like, oh my god, that's super scary jump scare. It like fits in a more natural way. So,
but at the same time, it's also really interesting just talking about horror in general. I guess a lot of the times in modern, usually shittier horror films, if you watch it without sound, they're almost never scary because they do, I feel like, rely almost too heavily on those like loud, obnoxious music stings that we were saying before something scary happens. But I feel like this, and because of how like meticulously he planned them, I would still be afraid, even without any of the like car horn or music leading into it.
Right,
which is also
right.
Chef's kiss amazing.
Yeah.
Just because the subject matter itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way it's presented. Yeah. Classic Mike Flanagan. Just talent. What a talented guy.
And also classic Mike Flanagan. I like the themes of like alcoholism recovery in this, which he's used a lot because he struggled with that himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just I don't know, something I can't explain about a plot or subplot of a person going through AA and just the positive energy that comes from those meetings and those scenes. I love that stuff. Like, he could do that forever and I wouldn't get tired of it. It's in Dr. Sleep, it's in Hill House, and this, and every single time it hits so hard. I don't know why.
It's in BoJack.
Yeah.
I
mean, talking about specifically Mike Flanagan.
Yeah, I know. Right. No, but like I also like that as a theme, and I think it's because like it so naturally lends itself to a story, because a story is like about change.
Yeah.
Like any story should be about some type of character change, and so to have a character literally be doing something that requires them to reflect and change is like a very natural fit to any story. I think that's why it always plays so well. But I also loved it in this, and like I said in my intro, I love them kind of not blurring the line, but sort of making the connection of like that, you know, Riley is going to AA meetings to better himself in that way, but at the same time, like for like Erin, like Faith is an example of like AA meetings for her, or even the sheriff and like how it connects him to his son and his deceased wife, that like it's a method by which to cope with the world around you and to like acknowledge that everything's fucked and you should try to like do your best to be better and continue moving forward. And to have the priest run the AA meetings, and also like to have him even pull the specific, because there is like one of the interesting things about being Catholic is that there are like really well written, nice like things in the Bible just from like a pure writing standpoint.
Yeah.
And so the ability to like pull those things and use them, like he says like the Serenity Prayer at the start of all the AA meetings, which is a very nice, well written thing that whether or not you are Catholic, it's just like it's a nice worldview to have of like, grant me the wisdom to acknowledge that there are things that I don't know and that I can only control what I can control type thing. And so the blurring of the lines there is very nice.
Yeah. Isn't that actually like something that all AA does? Like, isn't that part of the process?
AA is actually inherently religious. Like, their part of their whole structure is you need to believe in something like greater than yourself. Whether it like they aren't like you need to believe specifically in like Jesus Christ our Lord and Savior. They do definitely want you to be spiritual in some way.
Well,
that makes sense.
That goes back to the idea of like faith versus religion, and like turning yourself over to the idea that like you can't answer every question and you need to acknowledge that there are things more important than you in the universe, and like how that can be a positive thing versus like believe this one line of dialogue
and everything will turn out fine.
And everything will turn out fine. It's like those are two different concepts.
Like, even like Riley has a line in the show where he's talking about the difference between AA and RR.
Yeah.
Which stands for like realistic recovery or something.
Yeah.
Which is the idea that unlike AA, it takes it a step further where it teaches you that you have to accept that you are the one responsible for your actions. No higher power, like, you can't put the blame on something higher than you just because you're feeling guilty.
Because you feel guilty.
You need to change yourself and accept what you did and make amends for it.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, like the most evolved version of AA.
Yeah.
But also on the topic of AA, one of my favorite shots in this whole show is, I think it's in episode 2 when there's a shot of the priest holding up the Eucharist, and there's a match cut of someone holding up a AA chip.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the same. It goes with the idea of like people have different methods of having faith, and they're all, they can coexist. They're all perfectly fine for what you want to believe in. So I like that they use that visual reference to like visual storytelling.
Well, I mean, when you're talented, it's
just in general, the
do.
visual storytelling in this is amazing, because I was rewatching it for this episode and I'd seen it before. Like, even just the hints they give you to the true nature of the show, just visually, like when he first gives the wine in church, like they show that for a very long time, and obviously you don't actually know there's anything up with it until a few episodes in. But it's just so good. So many Easter eggs. Haha. Sorry.
Easter eggs.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great. And the visual too, like, what some of the visuals that I found the most striking were when the demon creature was like feeding. And I think part of the reason I found it so striking was because it wasn't inherently like horrific. Like, the camera wasn't shaking and there wasn't like loud music, especially the one at the end with Aaron, where it's just like,
it's
just
so
like
cool.
incredibly long and just calm, and he's just sitting there feeding on her.
My favorite is her cutting the wings.
Yes, because it's just so goddamn good. Like, he's so
Marco just had
good.
to take off his glasses.
I took off I'm wearing fake glasses just to take them off to punctuate my feelings. But like,
no, but on that point, like every time we see the demon or whatever feeding, and then someone goes to attack it, it doesn't even care because it's just so involved in its bloodlust.
Yeah. It's so
also,
cool.
it is stronger than everyone around it, and it probably
and it can heal.
that.
Yeah,
it has magic powers.
But the point is that like it's so uninvolved with other people's efforts.
Yeah, it's so uninvolved with just human things.
Yeah,
like it can't even be bothered. Yeah, very cool. Very, very cool. Let's talk about some of the human characters in the show, shall we?
So okay, let's start out with like who is your favorite / who is like your central protagonist in this ensemble?
Okay, this is a great question. I'm glad you asked, because the show starts off very much being like Riley is the protagonist of the show, and then not immediately, but like derails from that. Yeah, and you realize like, oh no, this is a thing. That being said, even though he's kind of the villain for most of the show, I mean, the priest is just such a phenomenal character in this.
Yeah.
And the fact that by the end of the show, he gets, like, I wouldn't necessarily call it redemption, because, like, he fucked up, but, like...
no shit.
But, like, he...
Oh, let's also, spoilers from here on out.
Full spoilers, 100%. But, like, the fact that, like, he has his own realization, and even just, like, the stuff of like, Bev Keane, which also is such a Stephen King character name, but, like, whatever... Like, her being a psycho and, like, kicking people out of the church or being like, they can't come in the church, and him being like, no, like, everyone is welcome here. Like, you have this all wrong. You're such a... We were all idiots. We were all wrong about this.
Yeah. And one of his lines is, like, it was never about me. It's, like, that's the thing about priests. It's never supposed to be about the priest. It's supposed to be about God.
That was, like, so, again, like, so validating to see him, like, come to that conclusion. God, it's so fucking good. It's so good. And also just him as an actor. Dan and I were talking about this. I've only ever seen him in 2 things, and he had bit parts in both of them. One is The Newsroom. In season 2, he has a sort of recurring bit part, which he's phenomenal in. And then he's also in The Big Short, where he has a big part in that. And in both those things, when I saw him, I was like, this guy is so good. Like, where is this man, like, and I kept looking him up to be like, has he been in other things? And, like, not really. He's been in some things, but not a lot. So to see him, like, get to have center stage in this show, he is such a phenomenal actor. And I hope to God that after this show now, like, he becomes, like, people start casting him in, like, leading man roles and things. Yeah. Because he is fucking incredible. Like,
he's gonna be like the next Benedict Cumberbatch.
I mean, I just, like...
He was nowhere, and then one day he got, like, one chance and then blew up.
It's, like, just the way... Like, oh my God. Like, the conflict of that character. Of, like, the pain that character is dealing with. And the way, like, he gives his homilies at mass, and
Homilies.
like
That was what did it for me. Like, he could have been just a priest
I know,
in real life.
I know, it's oh man, it is so profound.
Well, my whole thing with him is whenever he had to like be quote unquote meeting people for the first time, like, and
Yeah.
he had to hide the fact that he actually knew everything because he had been priest here for 80 freaking years. I found like his interactions with the people to be really convincing.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I guess I'll give my answer now that I took over so smoothly.
Very good transition.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think if I had to pick like a favorite central character, it would probably be Erin, simply because, yeah, obviously in the end she was the one to personally defeat this demon creature. And her whole storyline probably hit the most emotionally for me, because obviously, like we said, spoilers now, she was pregnant, and because of drinking the blood of this demon, the baby disappeared, which sucks. So bad.
Kinda
That
sucks.
hurt. Yeah, that hurt to see. And yeah, I do recognize that she did have a lot to do and was pretty central, but I do think the priest was meant to take up, more screen time, and Riley until he had to sacrifice himself, which was also like very cool
Also
of
dope.
him. Yeah, no, that was sick.
And so fucked
But
up.
at the same time, Aaron's reaction to it, also
know, I know.
amazing. All of the performances in this were flawless.
Oh my god.
Although,
Top tier.
okay, I know this isn't the time to bring it up. I'll give it to you after Dan, because I've given my answer. But
it's okay, go for
my
it.
one negative with this whole show is the person who was playing the doctor's mother.
Okay, the old lady?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for bringing this up.
Yeah, that is my one negative with this whole show, because the second she came on screen in the first episode looking old, I was like, this is a
Yep.
young person.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't know
And-
why she was going to be a young person.
Yep.
Obviously, we see her like aging down as the show progresses.
That's totally fair.
Yeah, but immediately I was like, this is shitty old lady makeup. Why is a young person playing an old lady? And even her performance as an old lady, like with her like wavering voice, which I know is probably hard to do. Like, I couldn't do better. I'm not
100%.
saying that at all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
like, it
I'm
was
just-
just like, that was like not good. Like, by the end when she's young, who
Yeah,
cares?
yeah.
But like at the beginning, I was like, and because you don't know why, I'm like, this is bad.
That is the one jarring thing, and I've never seen old person makeup done well.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Same.
it always looks like a young person in makeup.
But
Obviously,
makeup's gotten
we
so much
realize-
better over the years. I don't know why old
I know,
person
but
makeup
still,
can't get better.
I've never seen it nailed.
Yeah.
But think about the Penguin in the newest Batman. Like, that is
Well,
a
that wasn't
pretty...
so much
It's
him
not
looking old. That was just
different.
Yeah.
But, like, just make her look different, but the difference is an old person.
But was Monseigneur Pruitt
I've
played
just
by
never
the
seen-
same person when we see him old?
no.
Okay.
No.
So I was gonna say,
But
if
that
that
was
was the
because-
case, that would be good makeup, because I couldn't
Yes.
tell.
Yes. The reason they did that for him and not her is because with her we obviously had to see the gradual.
It had to be gradual.
Yeah.
So we know why now that they had
Yeah,
to do it.
like I
but
get it, but
It
yeah.
does, yeah. Like it raises the question right away of like, why is this not just
I
an
know.
old person?
Yeah.
Something's gonna happen here. Yeah. So absolutely, 100%.
But they tried their best. At least they did it
tried.
now and not like 20 years ago. Because then, can you imagine? That would be
Exactly.
shocking.
Yeah, that would have been awful.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this is tough for me to pick my favorite character. I'll say my favorite and a runner-up, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
My runner-up is Sheriff Hassan.
Yes.
I
I
just
love him.
love whenever he's on screen. Also,
brought
Raul
peace.
Coley. I have brought peace.
I have brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire.
Your new empire?
Don't make me kill you.
But my actual favorite character is the safe choice, I think, of Riley. I just,
Yeah.
I love his. I mean, just because he is kind of like one of the most central characters, so that's why it's like a safe choice. But I love his character arc. Again,
And I
as I
think
said,
he's the
I
most
love.
relatable.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, and
he is
I
like
just-
the furthest from religion of who we like encounter, at least.
We are introduced to the island kind of through him,
Yeah.
so that makes sense. And yeah, I love a good tale of redemption and
Yeah.
and reinventing yourself.
Yeah, yeah, phenomenal. I had texted you guys about this when I was watching, but yeah, the moment of him sacrificing himself, like when it was set. That episode, by the way, is so good because the episode before ends with him getting absorbed by the
He
demon.
dies, yeah.
Yeah.
Absorbed.
whatever. And then you have like this whole episode of like, where's Riley? And then you have the let's go back episode of like him and the priest, which is so good. I mean, like all their one-on-one scenes are phenomenal, but that one in particular, where
There's
he's just
so
like,
much of it.
there's so much of it, and when he's like just getting angry at him, and he's like, you have to be fucking, I'm gonna be honest with you, but you have to be honest with me, and it's like, it's so wonderful.
Oh, when the priest is yelling at him?
Yeah, incredible. But then, like, he leaves as this changed monster person, and basically the priest is like, yeah, like, go ahead and whatever, and if he's gonna feed, he's gonna feed. And he takes Aaron on the boat, and I was like, when they were on the boat, I was like, okay, there is one of two ways this could play out that I would love, and that would be because we had seen the image of him on the boat so many times when he's falling asleep and the sun rising, and he specifically tells her, in my dream the sun rises. I was like, if this show is as well written as I think it is, the sun, he's doing this on purpose to let himself die, and this was all foreshadowing. And then that happened, and I was like, God, that was the moment for me where I was like, this is like my favorite TV show.
You're
I was
talking
like,
about it, and I have chills.
I know. I was like, I don't.
chills.
I texted you guys. I was like, unless they somehow completely fuck the ending of this is gonna be my like favorite TV show we've talked about on this podcast. Just because of like what a wonderful like writing setup payoff moment.
And he even says like the dream ends with the sunrise and he never sees what's after that.
Yeah.
It's beautiful in a way.
And then also, and going back to the idea that like in this universe, like, okay, he always sees the girl from the car accident as mangled and fucked up, but then like in this moment now, the sun rises and you expect him to burn up, but instead it's just like this beautiful sunrise and he's sitting across from the girl that now looks normal, and she like takes his hand, which is, if you want to like get to again the ending of the show, like the idea that the people that are good people and that are having faith all have comfortable deaths in a way of like they're accepting of it. And so like this even being like him entering whatever afterlife like exists in this universe as like, okay, you've done the right thing, like you were a good person, come with me. And then the hard cut to what's actually happening, and Aaron fucking freaking out because this man that she loves is like burning up in front of her. Horrifying. So good. It's so good.
And like going back to the shot of him like accepting, like seeing the girl, right?
Yeah.
It even goes back to what he says about what he believes happens after you die, where it's almost like there's 5 minutes of your brain just dreaming, which could have been what he was seeing, which also maybe suggests that like because everything, like all these chemicals are releasing in your brain, everything's a dream, dying is whatever you want it to be. Which is kind of also the central theme of the entire show. Like, it's whatever comforts you the most.
Exactly.
So I like that he, like, in that way, was right about what he believed happened after you die.
Yes. Which is also a nice way to present it, because like to take a hard stance one way or the other, not that it would be bad, but it just loses a little bit of that nuance of like what makes the show work so well. So yeah, to get like, for him, regardless of what literally happened, like his last thing that we see him perceive is to a certain degree like being forgiven, or like you've atoned for whatever you did that was wrong, and like maybe that actually happened, maybe it didn't. It doesn't fucking matter. It matters to him, and like that's all that matters.
It brought him peace. So
yeah, it's really really incredible.
And that also connects to the fact that like a lot of people, just even like religious people, believe that, for example, heaven and hell are just states of mind of your brain at the moment of your death. Are you content with what you've done, or are you ashamed of what you've done? And that kind of, that puts your mind in a certain state that people might believe or might like see as a heaven or hell. Yeah. Well, and that's also, again, I think part of the brilliance of having someone that like understands what they're talking about writing the show, as opposed to like Darren Aronofsky with Mother, is like, I mean, it's like night and day, guys. Like it is like night and day. It's midnight, but he clearly, because to your point, like,
sorry, I hit my tooth with my glass. Oh my God. Keep talking. Ignore me.
There's so many noises this episode.
So many jump scares.
So many jump scares.
It's like the one
Yeah,
where we
like-
recorded at your house and I just kept like dropping papers or knocking over water
Carol.
bottles.
Unbelievable.
This is
That
what happens
episode,
when we
like,
record during the daytime. I have too much energy and
I know,
just
me
make a
too.
lot of noise. And apparently so does the city of Ottawa. So
Yeah. Fantastic. What was I gonna say?
Heaven and Hell, State of
Yeah,
Mind.
okay, so one of the other things that I love, right, is that the villains in this are taking everything literally as opposed to the heroes that aren't, because even in modern faith and religion, like, the vast majority of educated people that have faith, to your point, are like using these stories as a way to like figuratively explain the world around them. So it's like you said, heaven and hell being states of mind or being, and not like a cloud that you go hang out on or like a fiery pit. Like,
Yeah.
most people don't believe that way, except for the people that do believe that way and don't shut up about it. And so those are the people that you hear. And that's like this TV show where Bev is like a very literal religious person that is like trying to be like, no, this is what happens in the fucking end times. This is the book of Revelations. And everyone's like, Bev, what are you... Not everyone, but like the heroes of the show are like,
Well,
what are you
even-
talking about? Like,
I mean, like, even throughout this story, some people that end up, like, siding with her in effect, they're like, can you shut... Like, even,
Yeah.
for example, the mayor,
yes.
who ends up being on the side of, like, following this, what ends up being this cult, but even he starts out with, like, shut up. Like,
Yeah.
I hate hearing you speak. You're
Yeah.
so annoying.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I like that just everyone on the island kind of hates her a little bit no matter where they
Oh,
fall.
yeah. Oh, yeah. No, she's the... Well, that's even like...
She is the worst.
Even the idea that like the priest who has been the villain throughout the majority of the show, at the end of the show is like, she is such a villain that that's what makes him reflect and be like,
Yeah.
oh, like, you are so fucked up. I now realize my own wrongdoings. 'Cause
it's
she
almost
straight up
similar
becomes a
to the
villain.
Batman. Look at me making that connection.
Ooh,
Where
vengeance. Yeah.
where the people following him interpret what he's doing as
Yeah,
evil, and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
only
yeah,
when
yeah.
he
That's a
sees
good
that
point.
he is able to self-reflect and be like, maybe I've been doing things wrong.
Yeah, and the priest even wears black.
Yeah.
Priest is bad.
No makeup though.
And there's like a vampire, which is like a bat kind of thing.
Sure, there's lots of bat connections in this. No, but that is true, and even his line you said about like, it was never about me, it's supposed to be about God.
Yeah.
Like, that's very much Batman at the end of the movie with the flare
Yeah.
leading the people out. Like, it's not about me, it's not about trying to feel better. It's like,
Had the wrong effect here. Yeah.
this is just Batman. All roads lead back to Batman.
I never
There's
said
only-
this is just Batman. That is not what I was saying.
There's only 7 stories in the world, and they're all Batman stories. So no matter what, all roads lead back to Batman. Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's fantastic. I do want to talk about Raul Coley because
Yeah.
Carol, I don't know if you have any context for him outside of this and Bly Manor, because he's in Bly Manor. As
I
well, right?
only know
Yeah.
him from Bly Manor and this.
Okay.
But love him
So-
in Bly Manor. Oh my god.
He's great.
He's
Fun
fantastic.
fact: he is a giant nerd
Nice.
who has. There's a lot of YouTube channels Dan and I watch that he has just been on before
That's
he
where I
was.
saw him,
sick.
like, before anything.
Me too. I've always known him from that because he was just sort of like a. I don't mean this like in a shitty way in case he ever hears this. He won't. But like he was like a more of just like a TV actor.
Sure.
At the time, that
Until
wasn't,
recently, yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't like a huge like household name per se. So like where I knew him from was mostly these YouTube channels like Kinda Funny, which is a gaming channel, or
Funhouse.
Funhouse, another video game channel. He's like a big video game guy. So like I've always known him from that. So to see him in this was kind of a treat for me because I haven't watched Bly Manor, so this is my first time seeing him as a like
Yeah, I was gonna ask
actor.
if you saw
in like
Bly
a
Manor.
very
Not yet. No.
high-profile production.
Yeah, and he's fantastic. He's obviously fantastic. I will say, so the only 2 negatives I have about this show, okay? One, the old woman makeup. Again, as soon as she walked on screen, I was like, that's bad. But at the same time, I think I was the one that really was like shitting on in Hill House how we casted 2 different actors instead of doing makeup.
Oh, yeah.
So like, I guess I just can't be pleased. I guess
See,
I'm
that's
just
the thing
an
about,
asshole.
like, trying to make someone look old, it's so hard to do.
yeah, it's
Even today.
It's incredibly difficult. So, they did their best. You know what I think would have helped with it, though? Like, if I'm being honest, I think it's because like the first half of the show she's old, and then like episode by episode she gets younger. I feel like if like from the very beginning, but like it wouldn't line up timeline wise because they have to take the blood of whatever Jesus, I don't know.
Yeah.
But like they like if she's like immediately started getting younger every episode, it probably wouldn't have been as jarring to me.
Yeah.
But because she was old for the first half of the show, I was kind of like, why is there this bad old age makeup?
Yeah.
And then when she started getting younger, I was like, okay, I'm more accepting.
And then going the other way, it would have been so hard to like just have an old lady, like an old person.
Yeah.
And then when she starts changing, it's so sudden. Like, oh, is that like that's clearly a different person?
Exactly. Yeah.
So-
You're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
That's the one. The only other negative, I'm not even going to call it a negative because it's just me, but it's just because I've watched so much of Raul Coley
I know what you're gonna say.
that every once in a while a certain word would come up where I'm like, I can hear your English accent.
Yes.
And not because he's a bad actor at all. He does a phenomenal job, but I just know his voice too well that there are certain trigger words for me where I'm like, oh, there you are. There's your real accent.
You've watched the drunk Revenge of the Sith script reading too many
times. I've fallen asleep to his English voice too many times that like when I hear him doing his American accent, the very tiny things stick out. But I still think he does an incredible American accent. And like Carol, like, how did you feel about the accent as someone that's not like watched his other stuff?
Oh yeah, no, I
where
thought
he's-
it was like totally fine. I will say like
Okay.
there were, like you said, some words where it was like, interesting, but like pretty much every actor has it. Like even because
Yeah.
now I'm listening to Office Ladies, so sometimes like they'll point out like words where their southern accents come out because even like the little differences in U.S. accents from the
For sure.
Midwest and East Coast and whatever. So it was fine. It wasn't distracting by any means. But I do have a fun fact about Raul Coley that I have specifically for Dan. In my notes, I have for Dan. Raul Coley and Mike Flanagan's love of Joel Miller from The Last of Us inspired Sheriff Hassan's dress sense.
I knew about that.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
That is cool.
I mean, I figured Raul Coley would be in the loop of like The Last of Us, but
Of
I
course.
wasn't expecting Mike Flanagan to. That was awesome.
That's awesome. They're teaming up for something else right now. They're working on.
Raul and Mike Flanagan.
Yeah, and also Mark Hamill's
Well,
involved in it.
the next thing. It's called The Fall of the House of Usher, which looks awesome. It looks like it's probably going to be a more traditional horror thing, which is cool because like
Yeah, that's fine.
even Mike Flanagan's traditional horror stuff is excellent. So
Cool.
with that cast,
Do we know
gonna
like
be awesome.
what the premise of it is? Is it a ghost thing? Is it
all
a-
I know is it's so just because of like the synopsis on IMDb, it's very generic, or like it's not generic, bare bones right now. But it's about like this person who gets invited to like this lakeside castle,
Ooh,
and
castle.
it's just like spooky. I don't know exactly what happens, but
okay.
it's kind of it seems like a very gothic traditional
Nice.
horror thing.
Cool. I hope like I don't want to haunted house stuff to me is a little bit played out. Like obviously Haunting of Hill House specifically is the best version of that. Like I hope Mike Flanagan keeps doing like weird stuff. Like even like okay, so they're going to this castle, like make it a fucking weird thing that's not necessarily a spooky ghost.
I'm sure
Yeah,
he
if
will.
that
well,
makes
apparently
sense.
it's going to start like sinking into the lake, and that might be part of the
Ooh,
premise.
okay.
I don't know for sure. But
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, because
Wait, is this going
that
to be
was
a
something
movie?
I think it's a series,
Okay.
probably on Netflix again.
yeah, he's great.
Not
in the series.
100% sure. You might want to fact check me on that later. But
Netflix probably
Cool.
has him locked in forever. They're like, oh, all this
Yeah.
stuff you make for us works really
It is
well. Make
Well, they
it
are
every
advertising
year.
Yeah.
yeah, they're advertising it as from the creator of Hill House and Midnight Mass, which makes me assume it's a show
Yeah,
because they probably
Yeah.
have said it's movies.
Like
for some
Dr.
reason.
Sleep and
Yeah.
Gerald. Yeah.
Gerald.
Gerald.
Just
Um,
Gerald.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I hope there's weird shit. I hope there's weird creatures, and I like that. Like I always like when you can do that stuff and make it good like this did. So
Yeah.
that's cool. And I'm happy to see whatever he does next.
And also Mark Hamill in that setting, in
Oh,
a gothic setting. That's
dude.
going to be awesome.
God, just give Mark Hamill more stuff. I feel so bad that his whole life has been encompassed by Star Wars because anytime he does something else, I'm always like, this is wonderful, Mark
Yeah.
Hamill. Like, you should get to do whatever you want. But unfortunately, Star Wars is like, you're Luke Skywalker. We'll digitally de-age you and you can play around with a fucking puppet Yoda or whatever. Like,
I
okay.
saw, so he actually stood in for that stuff I was reading about.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
That's really unfortunate. They didn't even use his voice.
What?
Why don't they just get Sebastian Stan?
I don't know.
Everyone says it. He looks exactly like a young Luke Skywalker. He would be fine.
It's so
Oh,
frustrating.
Yeah, I guess he does.
Yeah, he really does. And also, like, so instead of doing that, they CGI'd a young Mark Hamill, and then they had an AI recreate his voice.
Yeah.
Like, they literally just
Just so they
created
didn't have
this
to pay him? Like, why?
because
Wouldn't
they
it cost
wanted
more
to be,
money to do all that AI shit?
Carol, it's because they want it to be as accurate as possible, even though everyone would be fine with them casting Sebastian Stan as a young
and his
Luke
voice
Skywalker.
too.
Yeah.
would be perfect for a young
Absolutely.
Luke Skywalker.
And it's also like you've done it before. Like the original Obi-Wan was Alec Guinness, and then you recasted Ewan McGregor, who now
And everyone
is
loves him.
as iconic in the character as Alec Guinness was. So like, what is your fear of recasting? And also like,
But
we're
that's old Star Wars. That was before.
well, that was when they yeah. But that was before the Dark Time, before the Empire. That was yeah, I don't know. And it's also like it's Sebastian Stan, who people love. Like he's the Winter Soldier. He's probably done mostly doing that at this point because like
And you have Sebastian Stan. Disney has Sebastian Stan on like how many movies that they haven't used him for?
I know
That contract. Remember, he had like 12 movies in his contract.
yeah, because
Where did that go?
Well, I think it was like maybe we'll make him the new Captain America, but then they were like,
Oh.
we should probably make Sam the new Captain America. Which
Okay, so-
cool, but like
Use that now for like another show.
I don't know, whatever. We always end up talking about fucking Star Wars. Let's get back to Midnight Mass. Yeah, Erin. I want to talk about Erin a little bit
Yeah.
because I also think she was wonderful. She was the other one I was fluctuating with the priest. Ultimately, I enjoy the priest like just because of like how much he gets to do and like the dynamic performance of it. But like
Just hearing him talk.
oh, he's so charismatic. But like yeah, Erin I thought was wonderful as well in the show, and she's also the actress that is from Hill House. She's Rogue from the X-Men from Hill
Yeah,
House.
Theo.
She's the one with the magic powers. And
I mean,
Oh,
she's
yeah, I have
also
to
in
point this out.
what everything Mike Flanagan's ever
Well,
made,
she's his wife.
almost. Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So you
She
can
was in
just
Blind Manor.
go
She's
to
in
Mike
Hush.
Flanagan, click on a movie or
Yeah.
TV show. She's in almost
Oh,
all of them.
Gerald's
She was in
in
Hush too.
yeah,
The maiden person.
she's
in
fantastic
Hush,
though.
but,
I mean, like,
yeah.
you know,
And fun fact, it's a lot like this isn't very little known, but I'll say it anyway. The book have you guys seen Hush?
Yeah.
I haven't.
Really,
You have,
you'd
Carol?
like it. I have, yeah.
Okay. The book that character's writing is Midnight Mass
Yeah.
in that movie, because this
Cool.
is like
They even
this is a
reference like
story.
specific plot points in that movie.
Oh,
Yes, because this is a story that goes way back from Mike Flanagan. Like,
Yeah.
he wrote this a long time ago.
I
Or
had
started, at
heard
least.
he had the idea of it for a long time, but that's cool that he like seeded it into his
Yeah.
earlier
Oh,
work.
and then in Gerald's game, when she throws a book at the dog, that's
Midnight Mass.
It's Midnight Mass.
that's awesome.
Well,
Yeah,
because
it's
he
like a little
pitched it
cinematic
around
movie.
in
Yeah.
2014 initially, like even to Netflix, and they rejected it. So to keep the
Idiots.
idea alive, that's why he started putting it in future projects. Because he's like, I need to remember this. I need people to see that this is still something I really want to do, even if it never happens.
yeah, oh yeah.
Thankfully,
Can
it
you
did
imagine?
happen. Yeah.
Yeah. If like you wrote this show and you know it's like the most genius thing and no one would ever make it. Like that must be the most disheartening thing of all time.
Yeah.
To have like your magnum opus just be rejected.
But also at the
And
same
people-
time, I'm sure there is like, I don't know. I don't create much personally, but obviously now we've all seen it and love it and know how genius it is. But I'm sure even though he wrote it and probably thought it was good, it's probably unlikely that he's like, this is perfect. Everyone's going to watch
Oh,
this
sure.
and love it. Like, you know, artists
Yeah.
always
Agreed.
have that self-doubt side of it too. So probably when everyone rejected him, he's like, oh, maybe it is shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, fair. But I know, like, after this came out, he was on Twitter a lot about... He was talking about publicly how important... Like, this is his most important show to him, or project to him that he's ever done. So I can't imagine how frustrating it would have been
Yeah.
to have it rejected so many times when, like, this is so close to his heart. And,
Yeah.
like, his whole heart was in this.
Yeah.
And you can tell.
Well, 'cause especially like as we mentioned, like he did have like alcoholism issues, and so like that's something he put into other stories of his. But he was also raised Catholic and eventually moved on to be an atheist. So like this is, I mean, his life story if he was on a small town with a vampire.
Sure. Sure. Very good.
And I guess he
Okay.
probably didn't kill anyone in a drunk driving accident. I'm not going to say this was actually a story about him.
No, I don't think so.
I would hope so. Okay, what are your guys' thoughts on the monologues? And here's what I just want to, for context, this is why I'm bringing it up, because this show is one of those shows that only has like 5-star or 1-star reviews, basically, when you look it up. And all the bad reviews are just like, there's so many monologues
Yeah.
in this.
Oh, yeah.
So this is why I bring it up. I'm pretty sure we probably all have the same opinion, but whatever.
Yeah.
What are your guys' thoughts on the monologues in this?
I mean, they're all, I will say, none of them are bad, and like they all are very impactful and relevant. But I will say, yeah, there are some cases where I'm like, this is like a lot of just like this one person talking, which is not a bad thing, especially considering like this is a small town. There's only so many people. Like people don't actually just talk like sentence to sentence to sentence
Yeah,
to
yeah.
sentence.
Wow,
like,
you're actually rationalizing with like a real small town setting.
yes,
like,
yeah,
that
I'm
relates
trying to
monologue.
put
Yeah.
myself into the world, Dan.
Nice.
But yeah, I don't know. I think like specifically the only time that it stood out to me in maybe an almost negative way is interestingly when Erin and Riley are talking like after she's lost her baby, and like it's the night when they're like really bonding, just like because they describe the afterlife for like so long. Like obviously both of those are like beautiful, and even like the quote you shared, Marco, in your intro like made like literally just when you were reading it, like I was starting to tear up. Like I'm on my period, that might like have an impact, but like it is like very beautiful.
It is
But
very
that's like the
beautiful,
only
yeah.
time where it was just like, I think maybe just because you were with those two characters for so long too, in general, regardless of what they were saying. And like I love kind of what is going on. Sorry, I'm just gonna shout over
It's
whatever's
alright.
happening outside.
We can't. Yeah, it's okay.
But yeah, because you're with those two characters for so long, that's the only time that I noticed it in like a possibly negative way. Every other time I'm like, yeah, this makes sense, and I love it.
Okay, I would like to quickly jump on that.
Sure.
Yeah, so first of all, I do love all the monologues in this. I feel like it's a really odd critique to be like the show is bad because it has monologues. Here's what I'll say. I part of why I like it is because it's a very old storytelling technique, and like the show is so engulfed in sort of like religious symbolism and the Bible and yada yada yada. The idea that like even the characters in it are kind of speaking in that very kind of old school storytelling way of monologues. Thematically seemed kind of relevant. It was also nice too because I feel like it really helped with the pacing at which we were given information. So for example, like the sheriff doesn't get his monologue until right near the end of the show. Like I think it's either the second last or last episode where we kind of, it almost for him is not an intro to the character. It's almost like tying up the loose ends because we kind of know almost everything and he's just filling in the gaps. Whereas some characters, it's like an intro. I really liked all that. What I will say, when I was watching the first time, that scene between Riley and Erin, it also stood out to me, but not because either of them were bad or poorly written. The only reason that one stood out to me is because it was the only time in the show, I think, where there was two characters that immediately monologued at each other. Normally
Yeah.
it would be like one character sets someone else up, and then they have a monologue, and then the scene ends. This one, and I did come around to loving it by the end, but the reason is because it's like, she asked the question, and then it's like, okay. And then we have the slow push and shot on Riley, and it goes and it goes and it goes. And I was like, okay, this is his monologue. That's fine. Everyone gets a monologue in this. And I jokingly thought to myself, like, oh God, I hope they don't do the same thing with her. And then he says, what about you? And then it just cuts to the reverse shot, and the exact same thing happens. And I was like, okay, like, I get it. I'm glad we got these character moments. There's something about just, like, doing the shot and then cutting and doing the exact same thing again that felt kind of funny. But by the time we got to the end and she's dying and we get the callback to that scene and get the callback
Yeah.
to that shot, I was like, I totally had come around on it, where I was like, okay, like that is very much, and you don't even necessarily realize it at the time, but it's like the crux of the whole show is that scene and like those points of view and like that conversation. And so like it is so, I think, important to really take your time in that moment. Yeah, and so I came around to love it by the end. But that was the only time the whole show, the first time watching it, where I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice that we're just gonna go from monologue to monologue. But like I said, I think it works out.
Cool. I mean, I love the monologues in the show. I think it's like, so in Hill House, Mr. Dudley had the monologue, and that this is like that on steroids.
Yeah.
When I go back, as I said, like, this is my second rewatch of the show, like, so I've gone back multiple times, and I think each time I go back, above everything else, it's for the monologues. The monologues, if I were to compare them to something, I would compare, like, these are to the show what action set pieces are for an action movie for me.
Yep.
They are the draw for me. Especially the scene that you're talking about with Riley and Aaron. Not to be a contrarian, I think that's maybe my favorite one.
Yeah.
And I can see, like, you guys made great points of how it like, because you have one and then immediately followed by another, it can feel long. But I don't know, I just love the symmetry of what happens there. Mm-hmm. And as you said, it ends up, like, setting up something for the last episode. We don't even know it yet, so that's great too.
Yes.
And also, I one of my other favorite ones is Lisa's monologue in Joe Colley's trailer after she
Oh my god, yeah, no, that
her
scene's
ability
phenomenal.
to walk.
Yeah.
And Joe Colley's just standing there sobbing the entire time. Another great one is or you actually already mentioned it, is Sheriff Hassan's monologue about why he came to the island to begin with, and that whole story. Yeah, I understand why. Well, I mean, I don't understand why so many people would review it 1 star for having
because of monologues. Yeah,
like, I was just gonna say, I can understand how some people might not be into monologues, but I, for one, I love them.
Yeah,
I love coming back to them every time.
It's interesting you say that, because I do, like I said, this is going to be something I definitely come back to, and to your point, that is what excites me now about going back to it, is, like, now that I know the plot, getting to watch it and be like, oh, what are the really intricate things that are happening in those moments that you maybe don't catch the first time. And even with that scene with Aaron and Riley, like, again, because of now knowing where it ends, it completely recontextualized it, where next time I watch it, I'm going to be like 100% paying attention to all that stuff.
Well, that's the thing, it was so fun to rewatch. Like, this thing has so much rewatchability, because there's so many things to catch, like, even the way characters interact with one another, or the things they choose to focus on. Like, even in the very first episode, when you encounter Joe Colley, because he's, like, in jail or, like, sleeping it off in the sheriff's office, and he's like, oh, you, like, came here trying to break in because you said some big winged creature, like an albatross, was chasing you. And, like, you don't know at the time, but that was this demon. And, like, he saw the, like, it's just so good.
Mm-hmm. But he just thought it was because he was drunk.
Yeah.
And another cool thing like that is realizing, like, after you find out that Father Paul is, like, Sarah is his daughter, the doctor on the island.
Yes.
And how he interacts with her the entire time. Maybe I'm just an idiot, but the first time I watched this, I didn't see that coming.
I did not see that coming at all.
Either.
That was a fantastic twist.
Yeah.
That was such a wonderful twist.
So again, watching those scenes after having seen it once, it's cool.
Yeah, because she's always like, he was always staring at me as a kid, and she thought it was because he knew as a priest that she was gay, and that he was disproving of that, but it's like, no, not at all.
Yeah, and then there's a scene where, like, she does a checkup on him, and he's like, thank you, I'm proud of what you do on the island. And he even says,
like, okay, weirdo, like,
yeah, I know.
We just met.
He's like, and he adds the line of, like, how you take care of your mother, which at the time is just because he sees that she takes care of her ailing mother, but her mother is his former, like,
love.
They weren't married, but, like,
love. Yeah, it's cool. I didn't even, I mean, until it's revealed, necessarily guess that, like, he was the older priest either.
Oh no, me neither.
Like, that was also a cool twist. And I feel like it's one of those twists where maybe like 5 minutes before it was officially revealed, I was like, oh, I think I
that's
get
the best.
That's
because
the best
it
kind.
Amps you up for what's about
exactly, and then it gives it to you. But like up until then, I was like, who's this priest? What the fuck? Like, I straight up thought, like, did he kill the other? Because he was being weird about it. So I was like, is he a demon? What is this? And then when it was him, I was like, oh, that's so cool.
But it's
that's
also
so
interesting because I think it's like in the third episode or second. No, I think it's third, when he's confessing to no one, but he knows every single detail of the father's trip, and it's like, that's kind of weird. Like, how would he know? He wasn't there. Surprise, surprise.
That's when I started to guess it, was
Yeah.
when he was like he wasn't referring, like he's referring to himself in the third person, where he's like, and then this happened and this happened, and I was like, but he was alone, and then I was like, oh, are they the same?
Yeah.
Is that what's happening? And then it is what's happening.
Yeah, and I like the format of that episode, how they made like custom Stations of the Cross
Yeah.
for his story.
Oh, it's so cool. It's such a, and that's the framing device for the episode, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it starts, it's so
The whole
good.
episode.
It's so good. Yeah, it's awesome. I also like some of the. Okay, this is so awful to say, but this, when I was watching it, I was like, this is kind of like the Avengers Endgame of Catholicism, because there's so many like callbacks and like payoffs to things in the Bible in this that I thought was really lovely and good. And like, as someone who grew up with it, I'm like, I get all this, like in a way that someone else might not, but might
It's like
still
a
enjoy.
comic reference for the Bible.
Yeah, it is. It really, it's the culmination.
What issue is this particular quote from? Would you say what book of the Bible is
Yeah,
it from?
exactly. No, but like I do.
We need a graphic novel of the Bible.
Oh my god, we should have.
I think
a
it
graphic
exists.
novel.
I'm
That'd
sure
be
someone's
dope.
made one.
I'm sure,
Probably.
but it's probably like one for teaching, and it's boring.
No, we need like
Nothing
an M-rated like
Yeah.
gory.
100%.
I mean, there are a lot of stories in the Bible that are pretty gruesome, so
Yeah.
I'm sure.
and
it
we
could
never hear
exist.
about those.
No, because they always like water it down for like.
Well, no, the thing is,
little
I feel
kids
like
and
we do
Sundays.
hear about them, but we're not like really made to understand how fucked up it is. Like, was
Well, the only instance I can think of is like
Cain
the
and
Passion of the
Abel?
Christ movie.
Oh, Cain and Abel is pretty fucked up.
yeah,
for
like
sure.
shit like that. Like, there's a lot of like straight up like murder, and it's like no
Well,
big deal though.
Even like the story of like Abraham, how he had to like sacrifice his son,
son.
and he
Yeah.
was going to do it, but then he didn't. Like, that's a pretty cool story.
Yeah.
Let's get some of that. Let's get some of that shit.
But you never see that.
Never see that shit. Anyway, so the one in particular that, well, there's a couple, but the whole story about the priest in Jerusalem and like him getting lost in the desert and finding this opening, whatever. This is like two stories combined into one in such a cool way, because there's the one part of it that is, it's very much like the story of Moses and the burning bush to a certain degree, which I don't know how
We've
familiar
been
or how much
talking
you
a
guys
lot about
remember.
Moses lately.
I know,
Between
last
this
episode,
and the last
this
episode.
Yeah. But like, obviously in that, Moses, discovers this burning bush that's calling to him. And it's in a very similar way, where he's kind of like out doing something, and he's called to this place, and he goes to this place, and now he's being called to, it's the beginning of his hero's journey in that
Yeah.
story, you know, of like, you need
Call
to
to
do
action.
this. His call to action. So much of the Bible is such great storytelling, and it's so like, I think we talked about this on I think Jesus Christ Superstar, but like how it's so ripe for adaptation. Like, you can tell such
I
interesting
know.
stories because they're all formatted in hero's journey stories.
Like in fiction, I love the tale of the crucifixion because it's so
Yes!
epic.
Yeah.
Like
It is.
like the story of Jesus's walk down that road to his death.
yeah.
Just as like a fiction piece, it's so awesome.
Well, and even it starts off with him in the garden being like, I
You know-
don't want to do this, but like, if this is my destiny to do this thing, then I have to do this thing. It's like Luke redeeming Vader. It's like, it's so fucked up when it is, because like the Emperor's like, he's like, okay, now kill him, and he's like, no, I'm not, and he like sacrifices himself, and then Vader's like, no. But like, anyway, but I also, as a kid, and maybe it's because The Prince of Egypt is an animated movie that I watched a bunch because it was a great movie, but the story of Moses is also very compelling because it kind of is an action adventure story, but it's also a hero's journey of like realizing who you are and like being called on this adventure to like free these people and like
Yeah.
do the right thing. It's so cool.
And Moses is the one who like grew up as an orphan adopted by like
By the
random people,
Egyptians,
right?
yeah, until he realized
that's such like a hero,
Exactly.
a movie hero origin story.
Yeah, because he literally is like he is the Prince of Egypt who is helping to subjugate this entire group of people until he realizes he's a part of that group of people and then just wants to escape it, but God is like, no, you have to fix it. Like, this is your destiny, is to fix this, and so he has to go up against his brother.
He's like Caesar.
Well, that's why in the third movie
yeah.
he literally is Caesar.
Oh, we already compared Caesar to Moses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, all of this is a very roundabout way of saying that scene when the priest discovers the demon is like, oh, like I discovered this thing that was calling to me, but whatever. But what I also love is that the other thing, if you know your Bible stories that it references, is that Jesus, at one point in his Jesusness, I forget exactly where, went into the desert for 40 days,
Yeah.
right? And this is like where Lent comes from, by the way, is because like Jesus went. But part of that story was that Jesus was in the desert 40 days and that the devil showed up to tempt him while he was in the desert to be like, you don't need to do this, whatever, whatever. And so what's so fucking cool about this scene is that the priest was literally in the desert and is tempted by a demon. And unlike Jesus, who is like the hero of that story, he's viewing it through the lens of the Moses story of like, this is my call to action.
Yeah.
Because again, like what the theme of all this is just like contextualizing whatever you want it to be, and him being like, I am important and I am the savior, as opposed to, no, this is not about me, which is what he comes around to at the end. Awesome. It's so layered and like so it's so cool.
But then don't forget, there's also a third Bible story layer of what he's telling us of the story of Paul on the road to Damascus.
Yes.
And he's encountered by an angel, which is what he thinks is happening.
Yes.
And which is why he
But it's
calls
not
himself
actually
Paul.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that too.
But then also, that playing into the whole self-importance thing of like,
I'm an apostle.
I'm
special.
I'm special.
Yeah.
And it's and until the end, where that's never what this was about.
It's
But
about
also-
This was the temptation that I didn't resist.
Just on a surface level, how fucked is it that the town was like, hey, you 80-year-old man who clearly like can't even walk in a
I know.
circle around this table, just go by yourself into the desert, have a good trip, our gift to you.
Yeah.
Like, what do they expect him to
Okay.
do there?
They explain it a little bit. So he was with people, but he wandered off in the crowd. That's how he ended up in the desert.
Yeah, but
Still,
also,
though,
like,
you shouldn't send
No.
a geriatric old man.
Should have done it 10
away.
years prior, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
it was a little too late for that. But it's so wonderful. But then, of course, the other Bible reference, that very overt one that I really love, is in that last speech that I pulled from Aaron, and it's the dialogue that ends. Well, it's not, because I think you cut back to the kids on
Yeah, you do.
the boat.
Right, yeah, technically.
I wish this was the dialogue that ended the show, but in the
No,
monologue,
but you need that because we need to find out that they're going to be that the blood will not be part of they're not going to end up dying like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
They'll
That's
just
true.
die a normal death.
That's true. The only reason I wish it was Aaron's speech is because her last line is, "I am that I am," which is also the Bible quote from Moses. Because when Moses discovered the burning bush and it was talking to him, he was like, "Who are you? What are you?" And God's response is, "I am that I am."
Oh.
So that's like a direct pull from that.
Cool.
Which has always been a fun part of that story for me. Because again, just we're talking about like how well written the fiction of those stories are. Like even just that to describe, if you were this all powerful being, how would you describe yourself? Like he wouldn't be like, "I'm God." Like that would like you wouldn't say that. Like he's just saying like I am everything. Like I am that I am, and like that is the point of her speech, is that we're all like connected in this way, we're all everything. And so like to end it with that, and I just, because that's also a Bible quote, I was like, that would have been such a poignant like cut to black moment. But
True, yeah.
in the context of the story, you do kind of need to cut back to the kids on the ship. That is very important.
But also, just a funny note about that ending is on IMDb in the fun facts. It, like, verbatim, it says, there is a strong clue that the demon did not survive, because Lisa's last line is, I can't feel my legs. And I'm like, it's not a strong clue. It's, like, telling you very explicitly. You also
It's
see
very
the demon
explicit.
failing to fly away. Like,
Yeah.
it's not a clue. They show you exactly what happens. I don't know why you had
If
to
you
write
look
it
real
that
closely,
way.
yeah.
Just like I'm imagining like those YouTube videos with like a big red arrow pointing and being like, things you missed. The demon didn't survive.
I'm sure IGN made a video like that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
But so to go back to the Bible references thing, it is cool that the two survivors of this are a young boy and a woman,
Yeah.
and they've lost their paradise. Like she can't walk anymore. She's lost what was given to her by this thing. Very much Adam and Eve.
Yep. It's like a new beginning.
It's like a new beginning. So that's cool.
See,
too.
this is the stuff. So when I first watched this, I texted you guys and I was like, "This is Mother wanted to be this, but
Yes.
you're stupid to be
No,
this."
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. This is everything. This is what Darren Aronofsky thought Mother was.
Yes.
Yeah. 100%.
I wonder if Darren Aronofsky watched this. I'd love to hear his thoughts.
I think he would have.
Yeah, he was probably like, fuck. Shit. Yeah. But yeah, so cool. And this is why I said it's the Avengers Endgame of Catholicism, because it has all these things where you're like
You don't even need anything else.
Exactly. It's awesome. So cool.
Yeah, touching back on what you were talking about, actually back on Aaron's final monologue,
Mm-hmm.
I also like that they toy with the idea of and she even says this, of where does my body end
Yeah.
and the rest of the world begin?
Yeah.
Because it's all just the same atoms and molecules that are in your body are in the environment around you. And
Yeah.
it's like, if you pick up germs on the ground, are they now part of your physical body?
Yeah.
Where does your self end and the rest of the universe begin?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just such a cool question to ponder.
It
that
is.
the show explores.
And it's also that, as someone that still knows people that have faith, but people that have faith that are educated, that explanation of maybe that is what God is just
everything.
the connection of everything is very much where most educated people end up, because there is this thing of what even is the universe? What does that
What's
mean?
outside of the universe?
What does it mean that there was nothing and then there was a big bang? What? But then also and you get to this part of this is just me also being very lucky to have a dad who has a PhD in the philosophy of artificial intelligence, and as such has touched on religious philosophy. But these were questions that I asked, of being explain this, just explain this to me, because I fucking can't get it. And a lot of the arguments for this more energy explanation of God, if you will, of
the force.
this force that connects everyone, because it's the only thing that can go through dimensions of time and space, like love.
The force.
Yeah. So, but the idea being that, yeah, you can fundamentally observe and explain everything up to a point, and then the point that you get to is well, these are just the laws of the universe, and then it's
Yeah.
but why?
And what's past that? Is nothing is you picture nothingness as blackness?
But no, that's something.
Yeah.
That's a concept and a shade. Do you think your parents would like this show?
I think my dad would love this show. I think my mom cannot handle. This is why I was talking about horror stuff, because I was thinking, would I
Oh.
recommend it to them? I think this would even be too much horror stuff for my mom. She is I only watch comedy movies and maybe Marvel movies.
See,
That's
that's what I'm
it.
saying about Rachel, but she likes scary,
Yeah.
so...
Yeah, my mom does not. I think my dad would fucking adore this show. I think he would love it, and I very much will recommend it to him as if you're up late working, which you do, and I know you watch TV, and most of the time when he's watching TV, it's just alien documentaries about oh, what's out there. So just watch this. I think he would love it. But yeah, that
He just watches alien documentaries?
yeah.
That's so funny.
I mean, he'll also if I recommend something, he'll watch it. But for the most part, he just watches random alien documentaries and historical
History Channel
documentaries.
stuff.
Yeah, History Channel
I think
stuff. Yeah.
my brother and your dad would be very, very good friends.
Probably. Well, didn't your brother major in
Yeah,
philosophy?
he did.
Yeah,
And he's
okay,
also
well,
obsessed with aliens and
Yeah,
history.
okay, yeah.
He studied history
Yeah.
before he studied philosophy.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Did your brother major in philosophy here?
No.
By here, we mean
Ottawa.
Windsor, Ontario?
Yeah, art. Oh, okay.
Okay.
I was gonna say because
He would have had my
Yeah,
dad.
yeah,
as
no.
well.
yeah.
No.
He
yeah.
studied history when he was in Windsor, I think.
Okay. Interesting.
Actually, that would still fall under though, isn't? Oh, no.
But he didn't teach it.
Yeah.
No, he wouldn't have had him as a teacher.
Yeah.
But would he have been his dean still? Is that a social science?
It is, if he was here when my dad was dean, but that
Oh,
was
yeah,
only
yes.
for basically when we were in university, which
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was out of that time
Yeah.
frame.
which was out of that time frame.
Your dad was my dean at one point
My dad was your dean, yeah.
because I technically fell into that.
Yeah, good times. Oh man, he wanted to kill himself when he was dean. He fucking hated it. Now he's back to just doing research and stuff. So, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, I love Aaron's last speech for that, because it encapsulates that sort of how you can still find faith in a
Scientifically.
in a scientific way, because even, and this is what I love too, is whether you are an extreme scientific person or an extreme religious person, on either end, if you're educated enough, you understand that there are still things that you can't explain. Everything always boils down to things where it's we just don't know anymore. So I very much get frustrated by atheist people that are everything is explainable, and that's why there's no religion. And I'm like, everything's not explained.
Yeah.
If you can't tell me that you took a grade 11 fucking physics and biology course and now you think the entire universe is observable. You're an idiot if you think that's the case. So yeah, that's part of why I like the nuanced approach of this, of like, sure, whatever. At a certain point, it all breaks down. At a certain point, nobody fucking knows. So if that's what you tell yourself to feel good and make it through your life, fantastic. But just don't harm other people.
Which also, like, you tie a perfect knot with the scientific way of viewing things, of what we don't know yet is just stuff that we don't know yet.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means we don't know.
Yeah, theoretically, maybe we could find out someday,
Yeah.
but we don't classify it until we know actually what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
You can have beliefs on what it is.
Yeah. There's that old quote, I think it's from Sherlock Holmes, but then Spock
Nice.
says it a lot, which is like when you eliminate, what's the quote? Shit, it's like, when you eliminate...
You could search it up and put it in the episode, actually.
I'm just gonna I'm gonna search it. I think it's like when you eliminate everything that's possible, whatever's remaining, no matter how impossible, must be true, or something like that. I'm fucking up the quote, but it's something like that. But it's basically just the idea that like all you can do is like deductively answer what you can answer, and then once you get to a point where you can't answer anymore, like... Hi, Marco here, editor's note. The quote is, when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Okay.
You can only
do...
guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, and no guess can be proven right.
Exactly. So you're just left with whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, but even
Anyway.
like the things we know now, like the laws of physics and stuff, could still be proven wrong. Like nothing we know.
Yeah.
We actually know.
Oh, well, and most of them do break down at a certain... Like, even
Yeah.
these, like, laws of nature, quote-unquote, it's like...
As you go down to like molecular level, a lot of
Yes, everything...
laws just don't even function anymore.
Everything breaks down.
So there's a whole other realm of like physics within that scale.
Yeah.
And who's to say there's not a whole other realm going the other way?
Exactly,
outward?
macro.
Yeah.
And also, like, we still can't connect all those different versions of physics. Like,
Yeah. It's like it's almost like they're different universes.
like you can't connect mechanics and relativity. Like, those don't connect.
Do you remember in grade 12 my theory that atoms were just mini solar systems? And I sent that to the group chat, and you're like, Dan, on a scale of 1 to 10, how high are you?
That is a very high person thing to say, but it's also a good theory. Yeah, good times.
And by extension, that would mean like a body of molecules is like a galaxy or something.
Sure.
So we're galaxies?
Maybe. Who's to say?
We are all made of stardust, so...
We're all made of stardust.
Yeah. I don't know. It's cool to think about.
It is cool to think about. And it very much also ties into, there's a Harry Potter box set in front of me, so I'm going to bring this up. But it's like how we've talked about with, like, if Harry Potter is, like, important to you because of your upbringing and connection to it, that's great. But, like, don't use it as an excuse to support a shitty human being. It's very much the
Nice
same.
tie-in.
Very much the same thing with this, of, like, yeah, whatever. So, but what else specific to the show have we yet to touch on that we should?
Can I just ask a question to clarify before we do that?
Okay.
I think I know the answer, but I just want to make sure, because actually on my quote-unquote rewatch before recording this episode, I only got to the 5th episode because I ran out of time, so I had to just, like, Google the synopsis to make sure I remembered. But anyway, so you know how the Father Paul is, like, allergic to the sun or whatever, but only after he dies?
Mm-hmm.
So... Because after Riley turns, he's immediately, like, can't be in the sun. Is that because they kill him? After the demon, like,
You have
gives
to
him
die
blood?
first.
Okay. Just making sure.
I did have a question about this, like, just logically.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that it's, like, the death and rebirth that gives you your demon powers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why they combine the blood with the rat poison or whatever, and they kill everyone when they're drinking it.
Yeah,
so
that
that way
didn't
they can
combine it, is that they were giving it to them throughout the mass.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
So it
Yeah.
builds
So they were already exposed and they just had to kill
die,
them.
yeah.
That makes sense to me. The only question I had was like, what was causing Father Pruitt to die in the first place?
So this is the one plot point that kind of breaks down when you look at it a little bit
Okay.
closely.
I'm
Let's
glad
talk
it's
about
not
this.
just me. Yeah.
He is the only one that took longer to, like, be... He explains it as because this vampire blood, angel blood, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
the blood of Jesus, whatever.
Yeah.
It brings you back to your prime self.
Mhm.
That's how it's explained, which is why he de-ages so much.
Yep.
And other people don't really change age. Like if they're younger, they're already their prime self. So he explains it as he just had a lot longer to go, which is why his situation was a lot different than everyone else's.
Okay.
Because he dies when he meets the angel in the cave, because the angel kills, like, he rips into his neck.
Yeah.
Then he revives him, and that's when he starts to become young. But I guess their argument is that because spiritually he had so much longer to go, he was, like, feeling all fucked up for some reason, which is why he died in front of that little group of people, which was just a way to bring that group of people into the loop, like, from a story writing perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also, the first time watching, had to kind of put that together a little bit of why was his death and rebirth so much different than everyone else's. But yeah, I just kind of landed on the fact that the point is, if you're given this blood of life, you have to die once, and then that's when it starts to, your second life, like, takes effect.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah, because I was also kind of like why was he
so sick?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, at the end of the day, like, it does not like really negatively impact the show at all. But it was just an interesting thing,
Sure.
plot wise.
Yeah. I'm glad we brought that up, though.
Yeah, important to touch on.
Another thing I want to bring up is, we haven't talked a lot about Joe Colley, and I love his character in this too.
Yes.
Poor Joe.
And I was gonna say it's a shame that he dies so early, but I mean it's perfectly fitting for like his arc and everything. But going back to what I said about like reinventing yourself, and I love how I think it must be episode 3, because that's when Joe Colley starts going to the AA meetings, and on the walk back home after the meeting, he and Riley are talking about like, does it ever get different for people like us? And Riley, he says something along the lines of, the world around us never changes. It's just us who has to kind of adapt to the type of person we are and do something within ourselves. And I like that this show presents the idea, or not, I guess reinforces the idea that like there are so many ways of thinking in the world that kind of tell you need to change nothing. Like, okay, let me reword this. There are a lot of positive ways of thinking in the world that I agree with, that say like accept who you are, and like self-acceptance is very important.
Yeah.
And being happy with the person you are, but at the same time you need to be vigilant enough to know when to change part of yourself for the better of like treating others.
Yeah.
You need to be aware of when to grow and when to reevaluate something about yourself.
Yeah.
And I like that this show talks about that, because again, we're living in an age of very healthy self-acceptance and ways of thinking like that, which like again I support very much. But also at the same time, you need to not just go fully in that direction and say like, I never need to change anything about myself.
Yeah, I'm perfect.
No matter what I do, which also ties into the whole what we were talking about of like enabling ourselves to do shitty things because of something we believe in.
Yeah.
Bev.
Like Bev.
Like
She
Bev.
killed Joe
Well, and also-
Colley's dog, right? Like, we know that for a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
What
the
a
rat
bitch.
poison or whatever. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she's the fucking
Hate
worst.
her.
But that also even ties like so much of the show has to do with the idea of like rebirth. But it's kind of like they're taking the easy way out of rebirth. You know what I mean? Of just being like, if I just do this thing and drink this blood and kill myself, I'll be reborn and be the best
It's
version of
literal
myself.
rebirth,
It's
yeah.
literal
Yeah.
rebirth. Whereas like what Joe and Riley and ultimately the priest end up going through by the end is like a spiritual rebirth of like realizing their wrongdoings and becoming, like you said, like reinventing themselves, becoming better people, which is a nice little parallel between that as well. Those two things as well. Very cool. I wanted to bring up, obviously, like making the sheriff Muslim is a very deliberate choice in this. That at first I was kind of like, okay, I mean, I don't, other than to show that like Bev is an asshole and like people are not accepting, I was kind of like, I don't necessarily know why he was specifically Muslim. I think by the end it becomes a little bit more clear, because again, like by the end it's supposed to be about like whatever your personal faith and like how you use that to connect to people around you. And so for him it's that, for Aaron it's something else. Like everyone has their own thing, so I think that becomes a bit more clear by the end. Yeah, but I just thought it was like an interesting choice at the beginning of the show, because I was like, I don't know where this is necessarily like going, other than we're just gonna watch a Muslim person be treated like shit because they're Muslim. So I'm glad it pays off in a way other than that.
Yeah, I like that. Even just the decision to include in this story about religion more than one religious perspective.
Yeah.
So it's not just religion versus non-religion. Like
Yes.
it's more, there are different types of religion at play, and obviously there's a lot more than we even see in the show. Like,
Of course.
but the fact that there was more than one perspective, I think this was a wise choice.
Me too.
That's what I was gonna say. I really respect it because, like, yeah, obviously it did suck to see him being like treated shittily, like because of his religion specifically. But I do really respect the opportunity it gave to show, like, even in some of his monologues or speaking to his son, that like we both believe in God. And like
Yeah.
coming from obviously our background where we just learned Catholicism, which like also believes in God, but also like does have some like famously pretty like white roots. Now at least people have turned it pretty white, and at times like racist, and just like, you know, not always great lessons coming out of it. It was really, I did really appreciate being able to see him trying to explain to Ali like the similarities and the differences, and even like to the townspeople. And I think like even just the representation of showing them praying every night, like that's not something you see in TV. Like it's so rare, and just like having that representation on screen, I'm sure was probably like appreciated by the people of that faith. And like Anne was probably even really helpful for any like Catholic people who watched it to be like, oh, not all Muslims are evil. Because
Which
there
is
are
weird
people
that
who
we
think
have to-
that, and that's so fucked.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, at first I was also like, okay, like maybe this is just a representation thing, which is fine. Like we don't see that often, so I get why they would include that. Another scene similar to the scene between Aaron and Riley, where at first I was kind of like, this sat with me in a weird way, but by the end I was more, I was excited about it because I was like, I get what's going on. Was the scene of him in the classroom,
Yeah.
where he does give the speech about like, this is the Reader's Digest version of what Islam is, and I was like, okay, like I get it. It contextually works because no one else in the town would know, and it's also for the audience. It's like, here's a crash course in case you don't know either. It did feel a little bit like here's a crash course, but I was like, okay, fine, whatever. But because the thing that he very much hammers home in that crash course is the idea that where they differ is that Catholicism has been so misinterpreted, which
Yeah.
then becomes the theme of the show. So once that was sort of became clear, I was like, oh, I understand why we had this like after school special moment of like, this is Islam, because I was like, it made it work for me narratively, as opposed to just being like a random info dump, which, as all good stories should, it actually has another level once you progress through it. It's not just the surface level thing that's happening in the scene. So yeah, that really worked for me after seeing what the show was about.
But also just in general, that scene was really useful in explaining or like giving him motivation to not want to go after the church when things started being brought to his attention. Because
Yes.
obviously if there wasn't that initial conflict, he'd be like, oh yeah, of course, let's look into this. And maybe everything wouldn't have happened the way it happened. But because everyone already like hated him, and he kept being vocal about like the things he disagreed with on such a grand stage, and like there was just so much judgment of him from the beginning. And I feel like, yeah, that one classroom scene where he was talking about the Bibles and the instruction of the Bible in school was kind of like the tipping point, that it was like, okay, now I can't do anything to these people because they don't respect me at all, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I love that whole subplot between him and his son as well.
Me too.
Of-
Yeah.
And then at the very end, when his son drinks the poison,
I know,
oh
I
my
know.
god.
Powerful
It's so
scene.
sad.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And that,
Ooh.
I mean, that whole scene, maybe this is a bit distasteful, but it's so hype when he pulls out the gun. Like, it's just so earned. It's such a feel-good moment, even though it turns into like a horrific moment. But
Yeah.
it's like, good on him for being so brave despite all this, almost the entire community looking at him in this particular way. That being like taking that step was obviously very hard to do for him. And he even says as a sheriff he's not used to carrying a gun at all, let alone bringing it to this thing happening at the church. So
yeah.
What?
That just reminded me of a point I wanted to make. So first of all, I do want to talk about that scene, but I just want to also make the point. We have touched obviously on this podcast about a lot of the times, like when you're telling a story that involves a certain group of people that would traditionally be a little bit demonized, you kind of go the opposite direction. So like the perfect example is in Batman Begins, how Bruce Wayne's white rich parents are the absolute best white rich people that have ever been white and rich, and are doctors, and also fund the city, and also build things for free for people, and also provide housing, and just anything you could think of that a person should do with money. Sure. They do. So yeah, the scene where the sheriff is like, I don't even carry a gun because I'm not that kind of person, like did stick out to me a little bit in that way.
Propaganda-y.
Yeah, of just like
a good cop.
I'm not that kind of cop. And I was like, okay, like it's not nowhere near as egregious as the Batman Begins thing. And because it
or
pays
even
off,
in the Batman when it's like,
oh, yeah.
Look at us, there's some good ones left.
Yeah, when he's taking Falcone out, yeah, and he's like, I own all the cops. Then he opens the door and you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. Yeah, no, it's not that.
Or the No More Dead Cops scene.
Oh my god. Which we didn't talk about at Planet of the Apes, but there is that exact scene, which is really funny. Yeah. But yeah, it works way better in this because it's not. It's just a setup payoff. It's just like he doesn't carry a gun, so then when he pulls out the gun, you're like, aha. Yeah, he was one step ahead this whole time. Like that's really all it is. But obviously, in light of like modern discourse and stuff, I was a little bit like, okay, this seems a little bit like we're doing this on purpose so that way you don't feel bad rooting for this character. But that's okay. Like I understand.
And even though it works within the world of the script as well, because like looking at where this character is and how he feels he sits in this community, that would be and also he has the line of he's never had a need for a gun because there hasn't been any deliberate violence on this island for like 50 years.
Yeah.
So going into the gig, he's like, oh, this will be like a cakewalk. And also, again, just looking at how he feels comfort-wise in this community, like I can definitely see why he would feel like he was doing a wrong thing. Like he would feel that it was wrong to carry a gun.
Yeah. Because
of the community he's living in.
Oh, so, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, it definitely is believable, and it leads to great effect after the fact. Definitely. I think it is one of those things too where it's like it seems less to me like of a deliberate attempt as more like I feel like this was probably always a part of the story, but then in light of recent events, Mike Flanagan is probably like, aha, it even works on this other level of like he doesn't carry a gun, and like this is so much of discourse that people are talking about. But I don't get the sense that he put that in there after the fact. Like everything was written, and then he was like, he doesn't carry a gun. Also, like as a thing that he just threw in there to cover his ass. I don't get that sense. I think it's
but also at the same time, like I would not argue, but just point out that there were only like 2 black people on the island, and even then they were like really, really light-skinned. So like if you're talking about the cops violence gun thing, it doesn't entirely like it doesn't really play on that level entirely, because there isn't like it's just what he's gonna shoot a bunch of white people like.
Sure. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. Definitely. It's just I've become very hypersensitive now to. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, because of current events, it's like whenever I see something like that, it like immediate. I was having this conversation with Madison. I don't know if we had this conversation, but like the dumbest things pull me out of movies where I'm like when something reminds me of like the real world or current events. And like a perfect example of that, this is so stupid, but that movie Fresh, you guys, Carol, I know you saw it.
Oh, with Sebastian Stan. Again.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Sebastian Stan, phenomenal actor. Could be Luke Skywalker.
Also on Disney Plus.
Fresh, also on Disney Plus.
Wait, are we sponsored by Disney Plus?
No, we're just saying, like, Disney. Like, come on, Disney. Yeah. But yeah, there's like a scene where the protagonist in that from fucking that show that
Normal
I
People?
recommended.
Midnight
Yes, Normal People.
Oh.
Daisy
There's like
Edgar
a
Jones.
yeah, Daisy Edgar Jones. There's like a sex scene, and I don't know if it's because Normal People was so like naturalistic in its portrayal of sex, but there's a sex scene, and then she wakes up the next morning like just wearing the lingerie that she was wearing as if she slept in it, and I don't know, like that is such a niche thing that whenever a movie does that, I'm like, why would you wear an uncomfortable piece of clothing like that? Why would you like have sex and then put that back on and go to bed? Like nobody would ever do that. And so anyway, and I at that point in the movie I turned to Madison and I was having this conversation with her and she was like, Marco, like who fucking like is this seriously what you're derailed over? And so I do, yeah, like that's very much how I feel about the gun thing in Midnight Mass, where I was
Sure.
sitting there in my head internalizing this and I was like, just stop. Like this does not matter. You're thinking way too much about this. Just enjoy it for what it is. So but yeah, that's how my mind works, which is I just fixate on the dumbest shit that matters not at all.
I was just gonna ask, does anyone have any other specific plot points that they want to bring up, or
I would like to talk about something quickly, which is just there's some like not unintentional, but there is some humor in the show. Like it's not like it's a very serious show with like very heavy subject matter. But there's a few things that I think end up becoming humorous because of the ridiculousness of it and because the horror isn't necessarily played as horror, and not humor in a way that like is bad. Like it's like ironic, but it's just kind of funny because it's like, oh my, like what the fuck, like how else would you react to this? So like a funny example of that for me is when Riley wakes up the next day and the priest is like, I wouldn't walk outside if I and then he like runs outside and starts to burn up and the priest is like, I told you. And it's just like, that is such a horrific thing, but that they're playing it so naturalistic of just the priest being like, I told you not to do it and you did it, man, stupid idiot. Like that made me laugh. But then also going back to the sheriff, like at Midnight Mass when the fucking demon walks out wearing the priest clothes.
Oh, yeah.
Was very funny. But then also the sheriff's reaction of like, fuck this, and just grabbing his son and trying to leave also made me laugh really hard because everyone was like, yeah, maybe let's hear this demon in priest clothes out, and the sheriff was like, absolutely fucking not, dude.
it's like, do you hear yourself?
Yes.
Let's hear this creature that we don't know what the fuck it is wearing priest clothes in this
I feel like the
culty
sheriff
church.
was the only one saying that the whole time. Like,
Yeah.
are you, because obviously he wasn't recognizing the miracles firsthand, or like seeing, I don't know why I said recognizing, seeing the miracles firsthand with everyone else. So he was just hearing all these stories, and he was the only person being like, are you guys sure about this? Or I
Yeah.
guess also the doctor too, because even when Lisa was cured initially, she was like, I don't think this is a miracle. Like, it's pretty rare that this would happen, but like, it's not completely outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and even Riley talks about that in one of the AA meetings. The first AA meeting after
Yeah.
that happens, when he's like, I can, like, misdiagnoses has happened. They're extremely rare, but it's possible.
Sure.
I can scientifically rationalize in my own mind what happened to her if I want. But the
Yeah.
one thing I can't get out of my head is, how did you know she was going to be able to do that? You had to know at that moment.
Yeah.
That was cool.
That was awesome.
Which is interesting because I don't know how he knew, because you even see him like staring at her while Bev is reading something, and it seems like he's picking up some weird energy from her. Like, you don't see anything, like nothing visually
Yeah.
is showing us that she will be able to walk at this time. I don't know if maybe in his head he's like, maybe it's been enough time. She's a small lady. The ratio of demon blood to her blood's probably good enough.
The
but
ratio.
It is still, I still don't know how he knew. You know what I mean?
I have a
Yeah.
thought about that. Also, first of all, we should just say like that as a moment in the show.
The walking moment.
Oh my god, is
Yeah.
so good. Just him being like, get up and walk, and you're like, what the? And
Well,
everyone
especially with
again.
everyone else's reaction are so
Yes.
good. Like, you can't do this. Like, what are you
Especially the
doing? It's
mother.
horrible.
Yeah. That
Oh,
is
you mean like
incredible.
when before it happens, when they're like, "What the hell are you doing?" Like,
Yeah, because
Yeah.
he just keeps standing back and being like, no,
Yeah.
come get it.
And then like one point he steps up the stairs and someone's
Mm-hmm.
like, "That's just cruel."
Yeah, it's so good. But my take on that was almost like maybe it's him trying to like reaffirm his self-doubt. Like maybe he didn't know, but he was kind of like, this is the litmus test.
Yeah.
Where he's like, what am I doing all this for? Am I going fucking crazy? And he was kind of like, fuck it. Like,
Because he did seem nervous.
he was
anxious.
nervous, yeah. So I think it was almost like, I need to like get all these other people to see. It's almost like I need someone else to confirm this is happening for me. So it's like, let me just throw this out there real quick. Walk. And then she does. And he's like, okay, good. Yeah, it's not just me. It's not just me anymore. That's cool.
Yeah.
That is cool.
And maybe it was more of a thing of, maybe it was less that she, after like a certain amount of servings of the blood, it would be enough. Maybe it was more of just like, once you have it in your system, if you believe you can do it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what was going through his head. So he's like, just really try right here in front of everyone. And
Yeah.
that's how he quote knew that it could happen that day. Either way, that is one of the scenes. Like there are a handful of scenes that always make me cry during rewatching. That is one of them, just because of everyone else's reactions more than anything.
Yeah. It's really good. And it also, I guess, kind of tying in thematically about like what he's saying about at the end about what a priest should be. The idea that I think there are so many bad priests, and like what he becomes by the end of this, or not by the end, but like when he's in his pure villain form of like, I have all the answers. Like, I'm going to tell you exactly what all the answers are, whereas this at its core is sort of thematically what a priest should not like literally trying to tell someone to walk, but the idea of like, I don't have all the answers, but like, this is what my faith tells me, so like, I'm trying to give my faith to you, and it works out, but then it's a very fucked up way of working out that does not help his God complex at all, and then he straight up is like, okay, cool.
True, yeah.
I'm magical.
Yeah.
Then there's just like miracles happening left and right. Oh, and on that note too, I like the small detail of everyone who wears glasses on the island slowly just stops wearing glasses.
Yeah, it's cool.
Well, it's funny because the setting, I guess, because everyone has been on such hard times with the oil spill and the fishing and stuff like that. Like, when you do encounter everyone on the island, unless they're a child, everyone is so, like, explicitly, like, old and in pain and wrinkly. Like, they really showcase that. Like, everyone has back pain, everyone's limping or groaning at some point. So then when that starts to go away, it's like, that's weird.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah. And another thing, this is kind of off topic, but I do want to touch on how much I love the production design of the island. I'm also just like, I love the maritime nautical type architecture and setting. So that's probably why, like, from episode 1, I was like, I'm in, I'm hooked. Yeah. And obviously it's a real island. It's not a set, so like they found it, but it's still, it was so enjoyable, the time spent, because like 95% of the show takes place on this island.
Yeah.
I think that's why I felt so, or not why, but part of why I felt so actively engaged in watching the next episode. I just enjoyed being in the setting. Because again, I like, the lighthouse aesthetic type. There's no lighthouse in the show, but that type of
There should
But
be.
shouldn't there be? Yeah.
They should have a lighthouse.
They could have shone the lighthouse
Even for
at
the
the demon to
fairies,
kill him.
That would have been very comic book.
That would have been the watchable but not amazing version of the show. Would have been like, we gotta get to the top of the lighthouse, and
Yes.
like at the end they fucking shine in at the demon, and it's like, yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I love the production design of even within the houses, and also the few scenes that we see on like the fishing boat. Just great. It looks so like cluttered and like there's this is a very specific thing, but the aesthetic of like fishing ropes, I can't explain.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
I love the look of that stuff, and especially on like little fishing boats.
Then you should
So all
watch
this to say-
Coda. A lot of that takes place on
is that
boats.
the setting? Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it also won Best Picture, so I should check that out.
I've been meaning to watch it too.
No, just that some of it takes place on a fishing boat. That's why you should watch it.
Maybe that's why it won Best Picture.
Because I was in the Academy. It also
Surprise dancing in the Academy all along.
Yeah. But I've only seen 5 Oscar-nominated movies this year.
Voted blind.
It also reminds me of that movie, and like I didn't love the movie, but Manchester by the Sea.
Yeah.
That's another thing where it's like all on this like coastal town, fishing town type thing.
For sure.
I just love that stuff.
You should visit the East Coast.
I know. I need to eventually.
That because I also love that, and when I was in the East Coast, I was like, "Oh, this is a dream." It's literally
Like the
just
Nova
like
Scotia area.
yeah, Nova Scotia.
But
PEI,
funnily, this was
fucking
filmed on the
beautiful.
West Coast in Vancouver.
Really?
Or an island off of Vancouver, specifically in a park called Gary Point Park, a seaside public area.
I guess coasts are all coasts.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's same idea
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's still rainy and gray for
That's
most of
just
the
the
year.
rather than
Yeah.
the Atlantic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I just something we like only touched on in our intros, but like the music
Mhm.
Yeah.
in this is also very wonderful.
Yeah.
very, very awesome.
So obviously, it draws a lot from like Catholic hymns and
Mhm.
their like their melodies and whatever. But there's also like, original score as well, which is very well done.
Yeah, very, very, very impeccable.
Also, sorry, fun fact,
No.
just because you touched on music. As everyone is dying at the very end and they're singing Nearer, My God, to Thee, that's also the song that was played by the band on the deck of the sinking Titanic.
Yeah,
Yeah. Is
So
it?
that's a fun little connection.
I
That's
did know that because they bring it up in the Red Letter Media video.
Oh,
Oh.
nice.
Mike specifically brought it up.
I forgot that.
That was a nice thing. At least I think, because I did remember hearing that, and that was the only video I watched was there. So unless yeah. But I thought that was that's cool.
That's neat.
nice. That's a nice little touching kind of call.
And you also didn't you recently rewatch the Titanic?
No, not that recently.
Oh,
it was
okay.
like a long time ago. I don't know why I was thinking about it the day I
Oh.
texted you guys that I hadn't recently rewatched it, but yeah.
Wait, actually, one more thing about music. Did either
Okay.
of you guys watch the trailer for this show?
No.
I don't think I did.
See,
No.
I didn't until I was doing research because I saw that specifically they used the song Somewhere Only We Know. I don't know if you guys recognize it from title
yeah.
alone. It's like a pretty like sad pop song. It's usually used in like romance movies when a
Sure.
couple is like
They use
about
that
to
for
reunite
this?
and like run to each other. Yeah, and so I was like, they used that song in this trailer. That's so bizarre. So I had to check it out, and I do highly recommend watching it. Like everyone listening, because it's kind of genius. I'm kind of obsessed with it because it starts
okay.
just like playing the song and showing the town just to like give you a little intro, and then it repeats because there's a line in the song that says "You're gonna let me in," and so it like elongates that and repeats it with like some creepy like strings.
Ooh.
Like it's very cool. It like
Oh,
reminds me of
okay.
the reimagining of Toxic that they did for Promising Young Woman.
Got
It's-
it. So
Yeah,
they remix it.
it's
a
very
little bit.
cool. It's a fun watch. It's like obviously a trailer, so it's like 2 minutes, but I really
Yeah.
enjoyed watching it.
Carol, I'm glad you brought this up because I was just listening to a song that reminded me of a trailer I forgot to mention when we did our trailer talk in that
Our
episode.
favorite trailers.
Yeah. The You season 3 trailer that had "Hit Me Baby One More Time" by Britney Spears. Fantastic. That is a fantastic trailer. I know it has nothing to do with any of this, but I'm sad I didn't mention it. That trailer
fair.
is so much better than You season 3. Like I saw that trailer and I was like, this season is gonna be the best piece of television I've ever seen in my life. It was a fantastic trailer.
Fair.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, something I want to touch on before we leave for this episode, though, that we haven't necessarily touched on, but like in the last episode, the use of like processions of like everyone having like these processions like walking towards the church or whatever, that I thought was just very cool because that is a very religious Catholic thing. A lot of times you'll do at like a big ceremony or banquet, like you'll have a big procession. Also, like famously in the Bible, when Jesus came to Jerusalem, there was a that's like Palm Sunday when they were laying the palms down.
Yeah.
I think they were going there. Yeah, so that's a very famous thing, but also like the way they used it in the show very much is like George Romero, Night of the Living Dead, like
Ooh.
those vampire type movies, or not vampire, zombie movies of like everyone walking around at night together. Like it captures both those vibes at once of like it's a very religious thing, but it's also like a very horror thing. And then also just the themes of like groupthink and all that like are very clear in that moment. But yeah, I just thought it was like everything in this show, just an incredibly well inserted thing with like multiple layers
You know,
behind it.
Everything mixes together so well.
Yeah.
But I would also imagine a lot of these old horror themes, like vampires and zombies and stuff, come from something of a religious origin, like at least some part of them.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know much about them, but especially like vampires, I have to feel like that came from, like, because Catholicism specifically teaches like drinking of Jesus's blood.
Yeah.
Not literal blood, but that is a teaching.
Yeah.
And I have to think there's some connection between myths about vampires and old religious scripture and teachings.
You got to imagine. I mean, that's where I feel like, yeah, like you said, most myths come from. Is that so?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Also, one other thing I want to bring up is I like the structure of episode titling.
Me too.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Very cool.
No, I mean, we just didn't mention that, so I wanted to bring it
Yeah,
up.
and they do make a point though of like in every episode, like I think they make reference in some degree or another to
Yeah,
the
it's
title.
either referenced by word or it's just literally
In theme,
the
yeah.
action, like what's happening.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
my favorite one is episode 5 is Gospel, which
Yeah.
is when Riley goes out into the world after becoming reborn and like spreading his knowledge of what happened,
so good.
but for a different purpose than what the priest thinks he's like. It's not pro what happened.
Yeah.
It's warning people against what's happening on the island. So it's like this. It's like the inverse type of gospel.
so cool.
Yeah.
So
great.
cool.
Any other thoughts to tie up?
Yeah. Any miscellaneous notes, Carol? Any closing thoughts?
No, but I do just have one point that I really enjoyed that we didn't really talk about is specifically in the Mass when he is having people drink the poison. I really like how they separated people about how like Ellie drank it, but obviously his father didn't, and then like Lisa's parents did, but she didn't, and just like seeing that divide even across families was really interesting to me, and I found that it made for a really effective ending where there were literally just like two groups of people fighting it out till the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That made it
Then
very
that
fun.
whole that scene in the church
Yeah.
when everyone starts waking up and
Yeah,
starts like
and they
attacking
have to start
people.
run. Yeah,
that was
that's
intense.
so
Yeah.
suspenseful. So good.
Yeah. Very good.
But yeah, that's my only point. I read all my fun facts and fun notes, so I got nothing.
Cool.
There
Well,
weren't
we've
a lot
already
of
given
fun
our
facts. I was a little
recommendations.
disappointed.
It's pretty.
Well, the
new.
show isn't very fun.
Oh, that too.
I know. Well, also famously, IMDb's fun facts are also not always very fun.
Yeah. Most of them are wrong.
Just facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a delightful show
Yeah, very
to
good.
kick off Holy Week every year. It's
Yeah.
gonna be my Easter show.
Oh, actually, I guess yeah. You know what? Sorry, there is one more thing
Okay.
to talk about. Is I feel like the only reason this released in October instead of like now is because it's like
Scary.
vaguely spooky.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like I
you're
said,
right.
So
it's-
that was-
you would think because like Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor,
Yeah.
they both seemed
Yeah.
spooky. It came out fall time. You would think this
Yeah.
is a fall show, but it isn't that spooky, and
No,
it
I think it was
also has more
advertised.
religious themes than it does to have anything
Yeah.
to do with Halloween. So
Absolutely.
if you did have to pick a season to watch it in, spring.
Be like now.
This is a spring. This is a spring show, definitively. Like
well, it's also like, new beginnings, renewal.
Exactly. Everything about this screams spring,
Yeah.
Easter vibes. Like, I would never watch this in Halloween. This is
Yeah.
not a Halloween
No, same.
show at all.
Yeah, I feel like the advertising for this, and I can't really blame them because it's a Mike Flanagan vaguely horror thing, but they went too far in advertising as like a creepy,
Yeah.
midnight mass, this like gothic horror thing. It's not
Ooh.
that at all.
It's not that at all.
Yeah.
It's very drama character heavy.
Yeah, agreed.
So yeah.
Yeah. Also, I
That was
love the
Midnight.
title. Midnight
Yeah.
Mass. Because it literally is the Midnight Easter Mass.
Well, I was
And we're
talking to
Midnight Mass.
Rachel about it, and I was saying I had to go watch Midnight Mass, and she thought I meant like a YouTube like live stream
Stream
of
of
a
Mass.
Midnight Mass, and she was like, "Why are you doing that on a Saturday night?"
That's
But-
hilarious.
Yeah. So if people don't know that this is a show, they might think you're just watching a mass.
Just gotta
so maybe
say I have
yeah.
to go watch the show Midnight Mass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to make sure they know.
Yeah.
All right, so go watch the show Midnight Mass if you haven't already.
Absolutely. Strong recommend.
Yep.
Thanks again for listening to the Feature Length Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to us if you like this video, give us a rating and review. If you want to stay up to date with the latest episodes of the podcast, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the bell to be notified when we post a new video, or follow the podcast on Spotify. If you want to connect with us directly, you can follow us on Instagram at Feature Length Podcast, or even send us an email at featurelengthpodcast@gmail.com. Catch you on the flip side. Hell yeah. Also, I'm breaking out the legal pad part as a snippet.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Even though it's like 2 minutes, I think it's worthwhile to have
Hey,
a
the snippets can be any length.
True. Snippets can be our TikTok content. If we want to get on TikTok,
God, stop.
we can post and we can edit images to it. So it'll just be like
Do
pictures
you want
of legal
FLP on your FYP? I don't even have TikTok. I don't know how I know that.
Oh,
That's really good.
that was really good. There's so much. We could be such fucking internet people if we wanted to with this channel.
We really
okay.
could.
All right.
Hey, we could blow up that way. It's actually a thought.
It is. All right. I mean, we can
Keep
put
that
the
in the back
snippets
of
on
my
TikTok.
head.
I don't care. Yeah.
Hey guys, while we're putting out all these great ideas, seems like we're doing the most recently. I think TikTok could be something.